en la cadena de suministro muy importante para los intereses europeos y globales.
Pues como vamos a terminar, ha sido un placer compartir contigo estos minutos. Me he quedado sin tiempo, me hubiera gustado seguir preguntándote. Joel Grau, Freight and Trader, profesor en Deusto y en UFM. Gracias y muy buena tarde.
Venga, hasta luego. Buena negocio.
Pendientes de la actualidad internacional, pendientes de las últimas horas, ya saben que el primer ministro de Israel, Benjamín Netanyahu, se encuentra de visita oficial en Estados Unidos. Ayer hubo un encuentro entre ellos, pues bien, podría producirse un segundo encuentro. El presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, que tiene previsto en los próximos minutos participar en la reunión de su gabinete, podría reunirse también en las próximas horas en un segundo encuentro con el primer ministro israelí, Benjamín Netanyahu, que también tiene, por cierto, previsto un encuentro con el presidente de la Cámara de Representantes de Estados Unidos, del Congreso norteamericano, Mike Johnson. En directo, el presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, participando en esa reunión de su gabinete.
En Galicia llueve.
Eso es un hecho.
Así que puedes pensar que Cabreiroa nos cae del cielo. Y sí, pero no. Porque caer nos cae del suelo, del deberín en Galicia, después de absorber los minerales de esta tierra para refrescarte con sus suaves burbujas. Cabreiroa con gas, el agua de la tierra del agua.
One in particular, because of what she's gone through this last few days, done an incredible job. As you know, Christy, I'm going to ask you to say a few words about Texas. The first person there was first person I saw on television was you, actually. And you've worked great with the governor, who's terrific. And you might want to tell a little bit about the trials and tribulations, but we appreciate the job that you and everybody have done. You had people there as fast as anybody's ever seen, so really appreciate it. We all do, and maybe you could say a few words.
Sure. Well, thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank you for your leadership. Texas is strong, and the people of Texas are incredibly strong. They've gone through something that is absolutely horrific, and it is heartbreaking to watch these families suffer the way that they are. As soon as this flash flooding event happened, you know, the governor has activated his emergency responders. Nim Kidd is his emergency management director, who is incredible, and has immediately worked with the local first responders to get help to individuals and get them evacuated, put requests into me. We deployed, sir, right away, as you know, because you and I were talking a lot during this time, the Coast Guard. We also had some assets out of Customs and Border Protection. Our BORTAC teams went in and helped with rescues and clearing debris so that we could get roads open and people get the help that they need. I think when I got there the most, sir, that day, as soon as I arrived on site, was getting a briefing from all the emergency responders, was just how unified they were in focusing on the fact that we're there to save lives. They were there to rescue people, find people who were still alive, and to reunify them with their family members. We as a federal government don't manage these disasters. The state does. We come in and support them, and that's exactly what we did here in this situation. FEMA went to an enhanced level immediately, but as soon as you signed the major disaster declaration, we were able to get them resources and dollars right away, just like you envisioned, through state block grants to help them with cleanup. And we're still there in presence, and FEMA's been deployed, and we're cutting through the paperwork of the old FEMA, streamlining it much like your vision of how FEMA should operate, and it's been a much better response to help these families get through this terrible situation. We still are looking for people. We're still looking for a lot of little girls and other family members that were camping along that river, and they will continue until they find every single person, and we will continue to help them and assist in that. I was surprised when I got there at the camp that day, right after this happened, the parents that were there, the parents that were looking for their children and picking up their daughter's stuffed animals out of the mud and finding their daughter's shoe that might be laying in the cabin, and just hugging and comforting people matters a lot. I'm extremely grateful for God's hand in that whole situation, because hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people were saved. And this is a time for all of us in this country to remember that we were created to serve each other. God created us to take care of each other. And that when we do that, we are happier, we are more fulfilled, and we can walk alongside people on their worst day and help them get through it and come out the other side, knowing that we can continue to live a life that God has purpose for us. So they're grateful for you. Several times the day after the flooding, you and Melania were on the phone with me, and I want to thank you for that. That meant the world. I was able to tell many of those folks that I had been visiting with you, and that you had said, whatever they need, Christy, let's deploy it and get it down there and be helpful. And on Sunday, when the families were waiting at a church to identify their children's bodies, Franklin Graham and I called in and prayed with the families and read some scripture with them, and he was incredible in making himself available to that as well. But we'll be back down there in a couple of days and continue to do all we can. But this is an unprecedented event. It really is. There's been tragedies like this around the country, but everyone is unique in different situations. And the response the federal government had supporting the state through this, I'm proud of the people that stepped up and immediately came. The Coast Guard, when they came in, they had a difficult time even getting the aircraft in and landed. They had to try several times in the weather to get it in and deploy. And I think we've heard about, our one Coast Guard member that was responsible for saving over 165 people, but that entire crew did incredible work. And all the first responders there did incredible work. And I know people are getting tired now, but they're getting reinforcements and volunteers are showing up. And I just want to commend the governor and his team for being the leaders. And they're so thankful that you're letting them make the decisions and manage the response like it should be. And then us supporting them with the resources of the federal government. We've already deployed dollars to the state, much like the block grants that you've talked about. Right. So they're grateful for that, sir.
There's never been a wave like this outside of the breaking of a dam, because this was almost a wave that ended up being 30 feet high, more actually. Now with the dam you can understand it, but this approached almost with that speed. When you see a dam break, it's not a pretty sight. It wipes out everything, and this is the kind of thing that built up so fast. And it's happened 2 or 3 times before over the years, but not to this extent. But tell them when you met, picking up the daughter's clothing. And
I had walked through the cabin where all the little girls died, and I had kind of fallen apart in there, but I walked out of the cabin, and a gentleman was standing there, and he said, that man over there needs a hug. And so I walked over to him, and I hugged him, and I said, do you work here? And he said, no, my little girl was in that cabin. And he said, and I just found her best friend about an hour and a half ago. She had passed away. And he just fell apart. And so then we just hugged and talked for probably an hour about that. But then there was the grandpa was there looking for his granddaughter as well. There was a dad there of one of the counselors. The counselor was alive, but she was dealing with the fact that she had hung on to some of these girls and was trying to keep them out of the flood waters, and had gotten hit by something and had lost 2 of the girls and wasn't able to hang on to them, and was going to live the rest of her life thinking about that moment when she wasn't able to hang on to these girls. But these parents were picking up their kids' belongings out of the mud and throughout the camp and putting them in bags. And then one of the dads said, I knew 50 of these girls here. So I knew that was her dress, and my daughter's friend's dress. So he was picking it up and putting it in a bag to return to her parents. And so it was and then the director was there comforting everybody who had lost his father the night before too, and he was still there trying to facilitate all of these parents grieving their children and find them. So the strength of people is incredible. One of the things that I asked there that day was that they all have escorts or counselors when parents come in, that So from that point, that when they came into the camp, that they have somebody with them when they're going and looking for their children's belongings or looking for their children. And so very emotional, but also just so tragic.
The relationship with Texas and the governor has been obviously very good for years with me, but the relationship with Texas and their first responders and us, with our first responders and lots of other people, and we brought in a lot of helicopters from all over, and we had a lot of helicopters. It was actually dangerous, a lot of helicopters up there, but they were real pros, and they were responsible for pulling out a lot of people, and we got them there fast, and Texas had some good ones too, but the response has been incredible, and the fact that we got along so well, I don't know, I don't even think that's a political thing, but we got along so well, and it was so unified. I think a lot of lives have been saved. That could have been as bad as it was, and you could have lost double or triple. This thing was just really horrible. Well, congratulations on a great job, and appreciate it. I know you're going down. I'll be going down on Friday with First Lady, who will be taking a trip, and we don't want to get in anyone's way because that's what happens. The president goes and everyone's around focused on. I don't want anyone to focus on us, but it's possible they could have somebody saved still. There's a lot of areas. It's a big area, and probably unlikely at this point, but there could be. I mean, they're thinking there could be the possibility, but what a tragic situation. A good job, and we'll see you on Friday, and we'll finish out the day here. I think you've been reading a lot about it's a terrible topic when you talk about financial after this, but we have a big country and we've been doing very well. The tariffs, as you know, are starting to come in at record levels. Tremendous amounts of money are coming in to our country. We never did that before. We're not used to it. We only have tariffs going out. We only adhere to the rules of other nations who charge us tremendous tariffs because we were led by stupid people or people without any business sense. And I'd like to ask God, you could maybe talk a little bit about how well we're doing with regard to the money coming in. And the big money will start coming in on August 1st. I think it was made clear today by the letters that were sent out yesterday and today. Go ahead, please.
Yes, sir. We will take in about $100 billion in tariff income thus far this year, and that's with the tariffs, the major tariffs not having started till the second quarter. So we could expect that could be well over $300 billion by the end of the year. We don't agree with CBO scoring, but for those who do, the CBO scored tariff income over the next 10 years at $2.8 trillion, which we think is probably low. And sir, under your leadership, we're witnessing.
And they gave us no credit during this last little, the great, big, beautiful bill. I always use the word great. I add that to it because it really is what it is. It's never been anything like it, actually. And I want to thank all the Republicans that voted for it. And I want to, scold the Democrats because they're voting for tax cuts. They're voting for no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and, many, many other things far more important than that. Great health care. And frankly, every Democrat should lose their election because it was purely political vote. They were told not to vote for it. So think of it. We got 218 to 2. And then with the Senate, we had 50 to 3. The Democrats didn't vote at all. Not one positive vote with all of the good things in there. Economic development money, tremendous border money. Now you're loaded up on the border. Hate so much of it because we had zero come in last month, so I'm not sure how much of it we want to spend. You may think about that. You may actually think about saving a lot of money because the wall's been largely built and it obviously worked. But you may want to think about that. But so I think it's incredible when I watch the Democrats, and they have standard lines like they had Russia, Russia, Russia. They had the laptop from hell. It all came from Russia. You know, they make things up and they go with it, and they feed it to you people in many cases. And they said, here's a line. And I hear the new line is death. Oh, it's death. Everyone's going to die. It has nothing to do with death. In fact, we're saving our country. Death is from allowing 25 million people into our country, of which 3 or 4 are stone cold, hard criminals. 11,888 are murderers, many of them committing more than one murder. That's death, and the Democrats did that. Joe Biden did that by allowing people to come in here just totally unchecked, unvetted, open borders, open borders. The whole world was dumped into our country from prisons, from gangs, from mental institutions. We have many people walking the streets, walking in areas that we don't know anything about, that came out of insane asylums. They released their insane asylum, the insane asylum population into our country, and it's amazing the job that you and Tom Homan are doing, by the way, on that. But we have to get them out, and we have no choice. We have to get them out, and we are getting them out. And so, Pete, you want to tell them about our great military and how well we did with respect to the bombers and the B-2? We had the pilots here 2 days ago, and they were incredible people. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Truly a historic mission, and demonstrated the skill and courage of the United States military. From those B-2 pilots and families that we had a chance to meet, sir, to the fighter pilots, to the refuelers, to the maintainers, to the air defenders who defended the base. What was demonstrated on the world stage was American military might and capability. And it wasn't just Fordo and Esfahan and Natanz that took notice in Iran. It was the rest of the world, that we have a decisive commander-in-chief willing to use these capabilities, which are the best in the world. As the president pointed out, no one else could have done what America did there on that night, and everyone took notice of that. With the One Big Beautiful Bill, sir, we've got $150 billion additional to invest in Golden Dome and all the other weapons systems and stockpiles and shipbuilding priorities of yours. Another month, another historic recruiting bump. It's not just the Army and the Marine Corps anymore. It's the Navy, the Air Force, and the Space Force, all historically ahead of where they've ever been. So historic spirit inside the military. We had a chance to be at NATO, Marco and I, and see how the world responds to us saying it's time for you to shoulder the burden and take the lead for your continent. That only happens with President Trump leading. And we're proud to be a part of what's going on at the border, sir, with now a 4th national defense area where we're helping get to that number 0 in securing the border. But that mission, Operation Midnight Hammer, re-established deterrence. It reversed what happened in Afghanistan. You saw the debacle of what Biden allowed to happen in Afghanistan and what that did to our image. President Trump said, with Operation Midnight Hammer, we're reestablishing American leadership and deterrence, and we're proud to be a part of it, sir.
And our so-called enemies were watching. They watched every minute of it. They watched. There was very few people that weren't watching, actually, but they watched every minute. It was a perfect military performance, the likes of which we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, if you compare that to the same country, the hostages from years ago, Jimmy Carter, it was unfortunate for Jimmy Carter. He was a nice man, but with the helicopters going down, the sandstorms, the prisoners, they got captured, then the election and the prisoners and Reagan and all the problems. It was nothing but problems. And that was a failure. And ours was not only the pilots. I mean, those machines flew for 37 straight hours. They didn't stop. They went skedaddle. You know the word skedaddle? It means skedaddle. They dropped the bombs, and somebody said, skedaddle. Let's get the hell out of here. And every bomb hit its mark and hit it incredibly. And as you know, the Atomic Energy Commission said it's gone. That place is gone. We had a lot of fake reporting, mostly from CNN, where the scammer a writer for CNN, who should be fired, by the way. She was involved with the 51 fake intelligence agents, if you remember that. She did that story, created a story out of it. She created a story out of the laptop from hell, saying it came from Russia, but it actually came from Hunter Biden's bedroom, or worse. Just a scammer, and she's still at CNN, which is pretty amazing. But we'll ask you a question about her. But they came up with this concept that maybe the attack wasn't that good. Maybe it, and I saw it happen right after the attack. I saw this person on CNN. I actually watch. I like to watch the enemy. You learn from the enemy. And I watch because you have to know where they're coming from. And I watched her say, Anderson, I'm hearing stories that maybe they didn't hit their target. Maybe it wasn't that good a hit. And they were hearing stories. The next day it was a little more, and the next day a little more. After 3-4 days, she was saying, I don't know. I don't think it was that. Except by that time, everybody knew it was hit perfectly. The evidence is in the planes. The evidence, the pilots are their best evidence. But they actually came out of their plane because they were here the other day, and they said, it was so sad. We did such a good job. We flew into very dangerous airspace. I'll never forget, we were in the Situation Room. And they said they have entered Iranian airspace, and everyone took a deep breath because they had more missiles pointed at them, but the equipment is so good, it's stealth, way up in the air, and it was stealth, and they went right through that, and they sort of, by the time they found out they were there, they were already gone. That was the word skedaddle, get the hell out of here. But they were right in the most dangerous airspace in the world, and they took those big, beautiful, very fast, they're unbelievable planes. I mean, they become really beautiful works of art. I always thought they sort of were cool, but now they look better than just cool, don't they? Huh? But they dropped the loads, and literally they would hit. If you look at this table from here to there, they had a half a refrigerator door is the way to best explain it. Take a refrigerator door, average size, cut it in half. That was their target. They hit every single one. Then we had 30 missiles, Tomahawk, shot from submarines 300 miles away. Every one of them hit their target. It was a perfect mission. Then they came back, almost 37 hours. Every plane worked perfectly. The mechanics were here too. I said, you got to get the mechanics here. We didn't have any problems. If you remember, they had a lot of problems with the helicopters, but they did fly through a dust storm, which they shouldn't have done. Sometimes you say, let's go back and try it on a nicer day. Dust and sand don't work well with helicopters if you know much about helicopters. But that was a horrible embarrassment to us. Then we had Afghanistan, which I think was the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And we would have gotten out. I was the one that got them down. I would have kept Bagram, the big air base, which right now is controlled by China, among the most powerful runways in the world, thick with concrete and steel. Anything could land, and right now they were 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons. I was keeping it. Outside of that, we were leaving, and I would have been out faster than them, but we would have gotten out with strength and dignity. Instead, that was the most botched up mess I've ever seen. They left all that equipment behind, and every year they have a parade running down some third-rate street with the equipment. It's supposed to be Fifth Avenue. It doesn't work. But with all that equipment that they left, they should have taken every ounce of it. I was taking I said every screw, every bolt, every nail you take out of there. And Millie said, I remember one time, sir, we're better off leaving the equipment. Why? Well, it's cheaper. I said, cheaper? You mean it's cheaper to leave a $150 million airplane rather than flying it into Pakistan or India or someplace, or just flying it straight home? It's cheap. Yes, sir. That's when I knew he was an idiot. Didn't take long to figure that one out. But they left all that equipment, but they left their dignity behind. It was the most embarrassing moment, in my opinion, in the history of our country. Not that we got out. We should have not been there, but that we got out the way we got out, with great embarrassment and death. You had 13 young people. I've gotten to know their families very well, but you had hundreds of people killed that nobody talks about. Yet the other side, many people were killed. Many people are walking around with no legs, no arms from that whole thing. They left from the wrong airport. They should have left from Bagram, because Bagram was a big base with hundreds of miles of fencing and territory around it. Nobody would be able to get near it. And they left. So, we've done a great job. And I think people are really starting to see it. They're starting to appreciate it. Pete's done fantastically. That mission was a work of art. And I have spoken to some of our perceived, I don't know if they're enemies, but they're perceived as being potential enemies. And they essentially said the same thing. Very impressive. There wasn't a thing that we didn't lose an engine. We didn't lose it. They landed and they were cheered. But the sad thing was they were cheered, And one of the pilots said, we were a little concerned because when we got out, we were told that on television they were reporting that we may have missed our targets. Sir, we hit every target. That's what I do for a living. We hit every target. In fact, when the bombs hit, a yellow haze came over the horizon that I've never seen before. It just lit up the whole horizon, brighter than the sun. It was like looking into the sun. He goes, we hit our target, because you know what that was exploding. And but they were a little downbeat because they listened to that fake CNN reporting and the fake New York Times. They worked together to try and say that it wasn't perfect. They couldn't say what they missed.
Pelados, listos, ya. Pesca no. Lo bueno sale bien.
Real fake. And so I just want to congratulate those pilots. And, a lot of people don't like bringing things like that up. I do. I always like confronting, because otherwise the public doesn't know that you're a bunch of crooked people. But they know, they've learned, and the media has to straighten out their act. The media is down to 17% approval. You got to do a little better than that. It's important for the country that you do better. I think they ought to make a lot of changes. I think changes are going to be made to the media, but it's hard to have a really successful country if you have a corrupt media, and we really have a corrupt media. And nobody really knows why. I mean, why would you want to have open borders and criminals pouring into our country? Why would you want to have men playing in women's sports, transgender for everyone? You'll have to figure that out. But some of you don't. I mean, I'm looking at some people, they love the country, but I look at other people and they can't. But we're really proud of our military. It was, and the people that maybe don't like us or want to play games with us, because I think that had you not had the situation in Afghanistan, I don't think Putin would have gone in. I think when Putin looked at how stupid and incompetent that operation was, he said, wow, this might be a chance. And we're dealing with him now too. We're not happy with Putin. I'm not happy with Putin. I can tell you that much right now, because he's killing a lot of people, and a lot of them are his soldiers and their soldiers mostly. And it's now up to 7,000 a week, and I'm not happy with Putin. Okay. Any questions? Yes.
Yes, sir. You just said you're not happy with Vladimir Putin. Is there anything that you plan to do to act on that feeling of unhappiness?
Well, I wouldn't be telling you. Don't we want to have a little surprise? One of the things we did with the attack is that you asked that question. I didn't mean to be rude, but I'm rude because I'm looking at some of these crooked people up here, so I'm rude. But your question was asked very nicely. But one of the things we did is we went over every fact. We wanted to get every fact straight. We wanted to have the distance straight, the number of pilots straight. Everything had to be correct, because this was a very important mission. If we failed on this mission, it was beyond the war that, obviously we had with Iran and Israel, and a lot of hatred, a lot of years and years of hatred, centuries of hatred. People have never seen anything like it. So we wanted to be correct with all our facts. So what I was doing is just asking. It would be great if the media would be correct with their facts. That's all we ask for. So go ahead. So finish it up.
Oh yes. Just returning back to Russia. If there's anything that you would signal about your displeasure with them.
Well, I'm very unhappy with them. There's no reason for this. It's turned out to be tougher, but it's only tougher. And I will say the Ukrainians were brave, but we gave them the best equipment ever made. We gave them the anti-tank busters that knocked out tanks. I mean, you just aim them in the direction of the tank and the tank is gone. We gave them missiles, the latest and the greatest. They were able to shoot down a lot of things that would have normally wiped out, probably would have been a very quick war. It would have been a war that lasted 3-4 days, but they had the benefit of unbelievable equipment. And Europe gave them too. We gave them far more because Biden shouldn't have done that. He should have equalized. We should have given them the same, or we should have given actually less than Europe. It affects Europe much more than us, but we're in there for over $300 billion. Europe's in there for over $100 billion, but still, Europe gave a lot. And I will say this, the Ukrainians, whether you think it's unfair that we gave all that money or not, they were very brave because somebody had to operate that stuff. And a lot of people I know wouldn't be operating it. They wouldn't have the courage to do it. So they fought very bravely. But we gave them the best equipment in the world. We make the best military equipment by far. There's nobody close. You look at other equipment from other countries, it's not even close. That's why everybody wants to buy our equipment. And that's why we're going to step up these contractors now that make it. And they're brilliant, but they make it too slowly. And we have to step them up, Pete, and let them make it at a much higher rate. Unfortunately, we have to do that. But if you look at our Patriots, if you look at our Tomahawks, if you look at our, what we do with tanks is you wouldn't want to be driving a tank. You would feel nice and secure, but they are javelins, they're called. And I gave them the javelins. Remember they said Trump gave the javelins and Obama gave them sheets, right? They called Obama at that time. Barack Hussein Obama, if you haven't heard, did a terrible job. But that was a war that should have never happened, and a lot of people are dying, and it should end. And I don't know, we get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin. For you want to know the truth, he's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
Do you want to sanction him? Lindsey Graham has a sanctions bill on Russia. Do you want him to vote?
I'm looking at it. Yeah, no, I'm looking. The Senate is passing and passed a very, very tough sanctions bill. Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Did you sign that?
It's an optional bill. It's totally at my option. They passed it totally at my option and to terminate totally at my option. And I'm looking at it very strongly.
Yesterday, you said
Go ahead, please.
The Council of Economic Advisors released a new report saying that imported goods have actually decreased in price from December through March. Well, my question is,
with the tariffs.
Well, the Fed chairman keeps saying that tariffs are going to cause price increases. Are the prices just not
chairman of the Fed?
Yes, exactly.
Well, you do a better job than him.
Are the prices just not passed through yet?
No, I think what's happening is everything's evening out. You know, when we charge, see what people don't understand, the other countries have been charged, almost every country charges us tariffs. We had deficits with everybody for years, for decades. And we were like this big monolith that made bad deals with everybody. We rebuilt South Korea, we stayed there. It's okay, we rebuilt it, and we stayed there. And they pay us very little for the military. I got them to pay billions of dollars, and Biden then canceled it when he came in. I said to South Korea, as an example, we give you free military, essentially, very little. And I think you should pay us $10 billion a year. And they went crazy. But they agreed to 3. So I got 3 with a phone call. And I was satisfied. I said, but next year we have to talk. And then we had a rigged election and we never got to talk. And you know what Biden did? They probably went to him and they said, listen, Trump treated us terribly and we shouldn't be paying anything. And he cut it down to nothing. So that's what happens. It's ridiculous. That's the other thing. We're talking to countries about contributing to the military, not only just paying more in NATO, but contributing. We have 45,000 soldiers in South Korea. We have 45,000 soldiers in Germany, 52,000 actually. And, that's a huge economic development for them. That's tremendous amount. That's like having a city. It's tremendous money for them, and it's a tremendous loss for us. So we're talking, in a very nice way, we're talking to them about it. It's very unfair. We supply the militaries to many very successful countries. I mean, South Korea is making a lot of money. And they're very good. They're very good, but, they should be paying for their own military.
President Trump, can I ask you a question about Jerome Powell as well, and then the question to the Attorney General. Jerome Powell, and then I have a question for the Attorney General. Jerome Powell, who you've been pressuring to lower interest rates, he's facing accusations of lying to Congress, which is a potential crime about the opulence.
He should resign immediately. We should get somebody in there that's going to lower interest rates. Why don't you call for his resignation?
Do you want congressional Republicans to investigate and pursue?
Okay with me. I think he's terrible. I think, look, we're paying, I call him Too Late. T-O-O, Too Late. Like Too Tall Jones for the Dallas Cowboys, right? Too late. He's always late. But he wasn't late with Biden before the election. He was cutting him like crazy. It didn't help too much, did it? But he was cutting him like crazy before the election with Kamala. And Biden, he was trying to get them in, I guess. I don't know. He was recommended by somebody that worked for me. I like you better.
If I could ask the Attorney General a question too, Professor.
Sure.
Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former Labor Secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of the set?
Yeah, sure. If I
Could I just interrupt for a second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
Mr. President, on the tariffs again, on August 1st, you've said it is the deadline. What incentives do countries have to negotiate? It seems that deadline keeps moving. It was April 2nd, now it's...
We didn't move, no. It's always been August 1st, that's when we're paying. And a statement was put out today, and I put it out just to make it clear. It wasn't a change, it was August 1st. We don't change very much. Every time we put out a statement, they say he made a change. I didn't make a change. A clarification, maybe. No, August 1st they pay. And everybody pays. Everybody has to pay. And the incentive is that they have the right to deal in the United States. If they don't want to, they don't have to pay, and they don't have to deal here. But if they want to buy and make a lot of money and sell in the United States, they have to do that. If you go back and look at some of the good presidents, our country was the wealthiest, proportionately the wealthiest, from 1870 to 1913. It was an all-tariff country. We didn't have income tax. That came in in 1913. We had tariffs. And we had so much money, we didn't know what to do with it. We had, we had a couple of presidents that were very, very strong. McKinley, I guess more than anybody, but he was the tariff king, but he was very, very strong. It's sort of sad. He made a fortune for this country, became very rich, and then Teddy Roosevelt went out and vice president, and he spent the money. And they said Roosevelt was a great president, and let's say he was a great president, but the money was paid by McKinley with tariffs. Tariffs are charged by other countries at levels that are ridiculous. And I call those other countries, and every one of them is willing to give us everything now, by the way, just so you know. Sir, we'll charge you no tariffs, nothing. We'll give you everything. We'll give you access to our markets. We'll give you everything. Is that a correct statement, Scott?
Yes, sir.
Howard, would you say that's a correct statement?
Exactly correct.
It's like they just don't, because they're very spoiled, because for years they ripped us off, and we didn't have a president that understood it, or Secretary of Treasury or Secretary of a lot of different secretaries are involved, but certainly Commerce Secretary was, not doing their job. I don't know about Kelly. She's small business. We'll keep it that way, okay? Her small business is bigger than almost all big businesses when you add it all up. But no, they are very respectful of our country. But the incentive is that they have the right to do business with us. Without that, they don't have the right to do business. And that would be okay, too.
We will see a flurry of deals. Here in the next 24 hours, will we hear a flurry of deals?
Yeah, we have a lot of them going out. But the deals are mostly my deal to them. We're picking a number that's low. We don't want to hurt them. And fair. We're picking a number that's lower than, in most cases, lower than what they charged us. But it's amazing when you've paid all this money for years and they get one president that's a little bit different and a little tougher on this subject, and they're willing to drop everything they've been charging us for years and years. I mean, we have countries going, you don't have to pay any tariff to come in and do business. They're giving us total access to their countries. They gave us no access to the country. They say, well, you cannot go into our country. Okay, good. Now we will give you total access and you don't have to pay any tariffs. But please don't charge us tariffs. And we don't like that deal. So the letters I send out we have made some deals. We can make a lot more deals. It's just too time consuming. It just makes it more complicated. And we can do things over the years too. We're not hard line, but it's about time the United States of America started collecting money from countries that were ripping us off and laughing behind our back at how stupid we were. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. President, on the tariff issue, so you talked about India coming, but then a couple days ago you issued a new tariff threat to members of the BRICS countries if they aligned with anti-American policies.
10% charge.
That would be India, Brazil, Russia,
They have to pay 10% if they're in BRICS. Because BRICS was set up to hurt us. BRICS was set up to degenerate our dollar and take our dollar as the standard, take it off as the standard. And that's okay if they want to play that game, but I can play that game too. So anybody that's in BRICS is getting a 10% charge.
Is that immediate, sir, or is that
pretty soon.
If they engage in some behavior?
Well, if they're a member of BRICS, they're going to have to pay 10% tariff just for that one thing, and they won't be a member long. I thought BRICS was, I said this about a year ago, and it largely broke up. But, there are a couple that hang around, but I thought it largely broke up. BRICS is not, in my opinion, not a serious threat. But what they're trying to do is destroy the dollar so that another country can take over and be the standard. And we're not going to lose the standard at any time. If you have a smart president, you will never lose the standard. If you have a stupid president like the last one, you would lose the standard. You wouldn't have the dollar as you. And if we lost the world standard dollar, that would be like losing a war. A major world war. We would not be the same country any longer. We're not going to let that happen. The dollar, you ever hear the expression, dollar is king? The dollar is king. We're going to keep it that way, okay? And I'm just saying, if people want to challenge it, they can, but they're going to have to pay a big price. And I don't think any of them are willing to pay that price.
Does that jeopardize?
Thank you, Mr. President. Are you optimistic about reaching a tariff deal with the European Union soon?
Well, the European Union has been speaking to us, Ursula, and the whole group, and they've been very nice. They treated us very badly until recently. Now they're treating us very nicely. It's like a different world, actually. They've treated us very badly. They were among the toughest to deal with. Actually, in many respects, they were much worse than China. Look at what they do to our companies. They sue Apple. They sue Google. $17 billion they got from Apple on a lawsuit that they didn't have a case. They have, judges that are European Union judges. And they take so much money away from our country in terms of that, in terms of other things that they do. They're very tough. But now they're being very nice to us, and we'll see what happens. We're probably 2 days off from sending them a letter. We are talking to them. I just want you to know, a letter means a deal. You know, a lot of people said, we got 200 countries. We can't meet with 200 countries. We have a few trusted people that know what they're doing, that are doing a good job, but you can't do it. You have to do it in a more general way, but it's a very good way. It's a better way. It's a more powerful way. And we sent them a letter. You read the letter. I think it was well crafted. And mostly it's just a little number in there. You'll pay 25%, 35%. We have some at 60, 70. Those are ones with massive, where we have massive trade deficits because they've treated us very badly. But I would say in every case, I'm treating them better than they treated us over the years. Don't you agree with that? I could have done much. I could have been much harsher. I don't want to do that. We want to have relationships, but in every case, they treated us far worse than I'm treating them. I'm treating them very good. I could go higher with the tariffs, but I don't want to hurt them. That's why when you just read it, you come up with the number. It's so incredible that prices are actually going down. Just so you know, when I got in, everyone said, eggs are going through the roof. I was in for about 4 days, and they started screaming at me about eggs. They said, that's Biden's problem. I didn't know about eggs. But eggs went up about 5 times. You did a fantastic job. And we ended up shortly getting, in fact, for Easter, they said, go out and buy plastic eggs. You can't use real eggs. Well, we bought 200,000 eggs for the White House for the Easter egg hunt that we have at the White House, and there were eggs. We had the price down, and now the price is lower than it was before. We did a good job with eggs, but we did a good job with groceries. Our prices are down in this country. A big part of it's oil. The oil, you had a couple of places last week, you had $1.99 for oil, for gasoline. Nobody thought they'd see that. I want to get it lower if I can, but we've done a good job. You've done a very good job. Do you want to say a couple of words about that, you and Chris, about what's happening with energy?
Well, absolutely. But I would say on the pricing side, President Trump, the fact that you've endorsed and supported a policy of energy dominance, that sends a signal to the market that we're going to have more supply. You talked during the campaign about inflation being a country buster. You've broken the back of inflation. In 6 months, among all the other things you've accomplished.
We have no inflation.
And we've got, heading into the 4th of July, these were the lowest gas prices at the pump in 4 years. And again, for Americans, this is like hundreds of billions of dollars that stay in their pockets because we lowered the price of gas at the pump. And when we lower the price of energy, it lowers the price of food. It lowers the price of the clothes you wear.
It's the biggest thing.
It's the biggest thing.
It's like a big tax cut. When you get energy down, every 50 cents is like a massive tax cut, and we've gotten it down much below that. You know, we had great energy, great low prices, everything else. When the election turned over, I'm trying to be nice about it. It turned over, shockingly, but nevertheless it happened. Energy started going up, and it went up really bad, and then he went back to the Trump policy. The problem was they didn't know how to do that, and he lost it. He lost that sucker. That big sucker was out of control, and his energy prices went way up, and that's what caused it. But it was also stupid spending. They spent money like, they used to use the term drunken sailors, but I won't use that term. Although it is very descriptive, I won't use that term. I refuse to use it. But they spent money at levels that nobody had ever seen before, and trillions and trillions of dollars wasted on the Green New Scam. Greatest scam in the history of our country, other than maybe Russia, that might have been. But the Green New Scam was the single greatest scam in the history of our country, and continues to be, but it's weakened badly. It's hobbling along because people are finally getting it. But they spent trillions of dollars on the Green New Scam, getting nothing for it. Devised by a couple of young people that weren't even good college students. You know, not even good students. Check out their marks. Yeah.
No, not
for CNN. Not for CNN. Go ahead.
In the last jobs report, Mr. President, in the last jobs report, the manufacturing jobs actually lost 7,000 jobs. When will the investments that you've been talking about have an effect?
Well, they're building the plants now. About 7 have started. We're going to have hundreds started within a short period of time. Lee Zeldin, who may be the most important man in this room, I'm sorry, but he's the one that gets the permits, whereas he's the one that has to get the permits for the plants and the factories, and permits that used to take 5 years, he's getting in record-setting times. AI, we're leading China a lot in AI, and if we go with this, I'm allowing the plants to build their own electric. I'm allowing them to become an electric utility, so they can produce their own electricity, because we need double to be successful with AI, which is the biggest thing now. We need double the electricity that we have, which is hard to believe. We need even more than that. And they're building plants with their own electricity substations. They don't have to use the grid. And anything they build extra, they're putting into the grid. So we're supplying the grid with brand new electric sources. And it's funny, when they came to see me, they never even asked for that. I told them about it. The reason they didn't, they thought that was an impossibility. You're not allowed to build your own electric. These are massive investments that are being made in building electricity for their plants. And they're going to have, I think, Doug, a lot of electricity left over. And that electricity is going to be passed into the grid and give us no more, like you look at California, they have blackouts and brownouts every week. They're totally out of control. They have a really incompetent governor. Where's Chris? Is he here? You want to speak to the subject?
Yeah, I think a huge thing in the One Big Beautiful Bill, Mr. President, because of your leadership, is the ending of these subsidies, as you call them, the Green New Scam. That saves our country $500 billion over the next 10 years. But American taxpayers were paying twice. They're paying that money, $500 billion in the subsidies, and they were paying more expensive electricity price. If you subsidize something, you should at least lower the cost of it. But in this case, we were subsidizing something and paying more for it. So the One Big Beautiful Bill had two huge things: ending wasteful spending. Wind, solar, and batteries combined are 3% of U.S. total primary energy. 3%. For $1 trillion, another $500 billion coming. That's just not a good investment, hurting our businesses, hurting our consumers. And the One Big Beautiful Bill also unshackled oil, gas, and coal development in the United States, onshore and offshore. Secretary Burgum has been working tirelessly on how, by getting the government out of the way, private businesses will develop more resources in the United States, lowering costs for American consumers and making much better leverage for the United States to help our allies abroad and reduce the power of our adversaries abroad. So just a huge win in the energy front all around, and I thank you for your leadership.
We're setting records now on energy, and there'll be nothing compared to what there'll be in about a year from now, but we're setting records. And wind is a very expensive form of energy. It's very bad for your beautiful surroundings, the plains and the valleys, and the birds are dying all over the place. The whole thing is a disaster. They're almost exclusively made in China. Not that I have anything against China, because I don't have a great relationship with President Xi, but I asked him, how many wind farms do you have? He makes them, but they don't have a lot of wind farms, I'll tell you, very, very few. And wind is tremendously expensive and is very ugly. And if you own a house that's inside of a windmill, your house is worth less than half. And you hear noises. And interestingly, in New England, you probably read, where for 50 years they had 2 wells washed up, 50 years. And last summer, they had 14 washed up. Now, I'm not saying that's the wind farm that was built, but maybe it is, right? Probably is. It's tremendously expensive, and it can only be done with subsidy. I know a man that's in that business, and one of the biggest in the world actually runs a company.
En directo, el presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, respondiendo a preguntas de los periodistas en ese encuentro, en esa reunión con su gabinete. Estaba respondiendo el presidente de Estados Unidos a esa amenaza arancelaria presentada por Donald Trump a los países BRICS y también a sus aliados, de imponer un arancel del 10% extra, y ha explicado por qué lanza un bombazo el presidente presidente de Estados Unidos dice que la amenaza de los BRICS al dólar es como perder una guerra mundial y que por eso se quiere enfrentar a ellos mediante aranceles. El presidente de Estados Unidos ha advertido de que los esfuerzos de los BRICS para debilitar el dólar estadounidense representan, dice Donald Trump, una amenaza comparable a perder una gran guerra mundial. Hablando en este encuentro con su gabinete, Trump ha acusado al bloque de intentar despojar al dólar de su estatus de reserva global, declarando que el dólar es el rey y que Estados Unidos va a conseguir mantenerlo así. Recordemos que en la jornada de ayer Donald Trump anunciaba un arancel del 10% para todos los países miembros de los BRICS y para quienes fueran simpatizantes con ellos, describiéndolo como una pena directa por lo que él ha calificado de sabotaje económico. Continuamos escuchando al presidente de Estados Unidos.
Which is made as solar brick, but it's a smaller use. We need the kind of thing that's going to fire up our plants, and it's not going to be wind, you know, that is very intermittent, as you probably know. But they've spent a fortune. They've spent trillions of dollars on this stuff. And I'll just give you one other story. A friend of mine is a very successful guy. He went back to see his mother in Minnesota, hadn't seen her in a long time, and he wasn't back for 10 years, which isn't a nice story. I mean, you don't see your mother for 10 years. She's got some difficulties, which I know the guy, he does have some difficulties. He's very successful, but probably not the nicest person. It was actually longer than 10 years, but he went back and he told me he wanted to go and look at the valley. There's a valley in Minnesota that he thought was so beautiful. I hadn't seen it in a long time. He's driving along the road. He said, oh my, I'll use the word gosh. Oh my gosh. He said, oh. He said, it looked like a junkyard. He had 159 windmills. They were all over the place. Some were old, some were newer, different companies, different shapes, different sizes, different colors. Many of them were terminated. Terminated meaning closed. You can't take them down because the environmentalists don't let you bury the blades because they're made out of a fiber they say is bad for the earth. So they want you to put them up, but they don't let you take them down. But many of them were turned off. He said it looked like a junkyard. Go to Palm Springs, California, and take a look at that pile of junk. And you go into a wealthy neighborhood. Before you get there, you have to ride through hundreds of windmills that are, most of them are turned off. They're rotting, they're rusting, they're 30 years old, 20 years old. And they have a very short life. You know, those windmills have a very short life, especially the ones that are in the nice salty Atlantic Ocean and Pacific Ocean where the salt just gets onto that steel and decimates it. No, it's a horrible, horrible thing for our country. And I speak out. It would be nice to say wind because it sounds so good, doesn't it, Doug? Wind. But it's not. It's these ugly machines, and they're all made, you got to see, some are a little taller, a little shorter. They're made by different companies. They have different stocks. They have different blades. They have different everything. It is so horrible. And if you look at smart countries, they don't use it. Smart countries don't use it. And we're now a smart country. We're a brilliant country. We're not smart. We're brilliant now. We're going to be a brilliant country. We have to be because we have to catch up for some really stupid people that did a bad job. Yes, Brian?
Yes, Mr. President, I've got a quick comment, some feedback as a native Texan, someone that I grew up bringing my kids to a camp very near the affected camp now. Thank you on behalf of Texas. I've gotten hundreds of messages that want to thank. It's if you're in the cabinet room, you can tell the president and his team on behalf of Texans, thank you so much for the quick response and the hugs. I saw that you gave. Two quick questions.
I got a Palestinian senator. His name is Shimmer. He's a good Palestinian. No, he's a Palestinian. He's become a Palestinian. He's abandoned the Jews. But I saw him say, it's Trump's fault. Yeah, that's right. It's Trump's fault. He was actually, do you ever see John Lovett's The Liar? Where he goes, yeah, I went to Harvard. That's right. This was Schumer. He goes, yeah, it's Trump's fault. That's right. It's Trump. I actually saw that stupid guy try and blame it on me. And I said, man, that's a tough one to take. But his career is limited because I hear AOC is going to beat him, and she's no bargain either, by the way. Go ahead.
Well, just say that's an example of America First team effort to get this country back. So that's what America First looks like for the viewers watching us at home. Two questions. Looks like we have a rogue judge, an Obama-backed rogue judge that is attempting to block the funding to Planned Parenthood, which the big, beautiful bill cuts off the funding to Planned Parenthood. Any plans to challenge that?
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, we're on it. We're on it. And I texted, I believe, I talked to yesterday Secretary Lutnick and Secretary Besson. I reached out to you to let you know that we were on it in the big, beautiful bill.
Wonderful. And then
I let her handle that question. You notice? I said, go ahead, handle that question.
Toss it to her. Then my second question was Secretary Rollins. You did an amazing press conference today in front of the Department of Agriculture. You talked about the Farm Act and the need to get China out of our country owning farmland. For the viewers at home that might have missed that, can you recap what that means to national security to make sure we can grow our own food?
Well, thank you, Brian, sir, if you don't mind. Yes, this morning, Secretary Hegseth, Secretary Noem, and Attorney General Bondi and I had a press conference at the USDA. I just happened to have a chart in case it came up, but obviously the Chinese owning of farmland in our country is a massive national security issue. And for the media, you can see the yellow is where all of the farms have been purchased over the last number of years, and the red is around all of the military bases where that farmland has been purchased. So this is a massive national security issue. The press conference this morning included 3 of our greatest governors as well, Sarah Sanders from Arkansas, Jim Pillen from Nebraska, and Bill Lee from Tennessee. The states have begun taking a leadership role to ban the purchasing of China farmland. Obviously, Congress needs to step up and catch up, and we're going to be working alongside of them as well. We had some of our members, great members of Congress there, but it is time. And I think that this morning was symbolic of many things. The first of this administration working every day to effectuate President Trump's leadership and unequivocal support of America first. But second, just how close we are as a cabinet. I don't know in any other administration that you'd have 4 cabinet members at the USDA on a Tuesday morning when it's about 110 degrees outside with the sun beating down on us talking about, sir, your vision. So I think it was a great day. It was just the start. There's an executive order coming and some other things coming behind that. But protecting America's farms isn't just about protecting our farmers. It's also about national security. So that's what we discussed this morning.
I do want to say that I think we have had a really good relationship with China lately, and we're getting along with them very well. They've been very fair on our trade deal, honestly. And I hope we're going to have a great relationship. It's a big, strong, powerful country. We're more powerful than they are. We have much better military equipment than they do. But we are getting along with them very well. I'm getting along with President Xi very well. We speak often. And with all of that being said, and I understand what you're saying, but I think we're getting along with China very well.
Mr. President, you have sent more weapons to Ukraine, as you said last night. Last week, the Pentagon paused some shipments of weapons to Ukraine. Did you approve of that pause?
We wanted to put defensive weapons because Putin is not treating human beings right. He's killing too many people. So we're sending some defensive weapons to Ukraine, and I've approved that.
So who ordered the pause last week?
I don't know. What did you tell me?
I think that's a question for the
Go ahead.
Mr. President, on immigration, the Secretary of the Agriculture did say this morning that undocumented workers would not be covered by any amnesty who are working on farms. You had said maybe that the ISA folks won't go after those folks on farms. So which is...
There's no amnesty. What we're doing is we're getting rid of criminals, but we are doing a work program. Do you want to explain that, please?
Yeah, this morning we talked about, of course, this was a top of mind question. This morning we talked about protecting the farmers and the farmland, but obviously this president's vision of no amnesty, mass deportation continues, but in a strategic way, and then ensuring that our farmers have the labor that they need. Secretary Chavez-DeRimmer has been a leader on this. Obviously, this comes out of the Labor Department, but moving toward automation, ensuring that our farmers have that workforce, and moving toward an American workforce. So all of the above.
We give the farmers the people they need, but we're not talking amnesty. Lori, do you want to say something about that?
Thank you, Mr. President. On this, thank you, Secretary Rollins. How important This is never to displace the American worker. What the Department of Labor is doing is focusing on what the law entails now, being more modernized, more streamlining to work through the H programs. We're going to have a concierge approach to that, where we have, developed a new office to answer the need of our farmers and ranchers and producers, and not to displace the American worker and follow within the law now. And that does not include an amnesty program at all. And we've seen that working, and we'll continue to have that roll out. On the other topics that we've somewhat talked about, the jobs numbers, Mr. President, 4 months in a row, we've seen those jobs numbers increase. That's an exciting time for our manufacturers. That was asked earlier. We know it's going to take some time, but through that deregulation process that Lee and I are working on as well, the Department of Labor has rolled out 63 new deregulations that we're going to be moving through. In the first Trump administration, it was successful with over 30. We've just rolled out 63 new ones in order to double down on those manufacturing companies, to let them know that we have signaled through this process that we will assist them in getting the workforce that they need. It's an exciting time. That one big beautiful bill, that was the signal to my former colleagues in Congress to get this done. It's been an important time. I spent time on the ground visiting 7 states in 9 days prior to that bill being passed, because it was the most pro-worker piece of legislation that we will ever see really in this country right now. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. That matters to the American worker, because we don't want to take their money and give it back. We want them to keep more of their hard-earned dollars in their pockets currently, and that's what they're excited about. And as I move forward with these tariff talks, I heard a company, orthopedic company in Indiana, say to me, for the first time since you have taken office, Mr. President, their increase in their bottom line by 8% since these tariff talks have happened. Not one company has said the president is not doing a good job. These tariff talks are working. They're feeling it on the ground. The media has told a false story, because what's happening on the ground is positive, and that's what we're seeing in these jobs numbers. So I really, through the Department of Labor, to come in behind all the secretaries and build this workforce is going to be key to the American worker. So thank you for what everybody did this last week. The one big beautiful bill is a doubling down of this, and we're going to see these workers start to grow. And that apprenticeship program is going to be working.
That's right.
We'll have that million apprentices across the
country. As you know, we're building plants all over the country now, which you weren't building any plants 4 years ago. You weren't building anything. But those plants, when they open up, it's going to be, you'll see numbers like you haven't seen ever. I don't think in history you'll never see numbers like what we're going to see in the very near future. Many of them are building the plants. Some are just starting right now. You know, it's a brand new administration. But and they wouldn't be here except for 2 things. November 5th, the election, and the tariffs. And frankly, I guess the election was more important because of the tariffs. I mean, another person wouldn't have done this. But they're coming in because of the tariffs. They have to, they're not going to pay 25, 30, 40, 50%, 70 and 100%. And we'll be announcing something very soon on pharmaceuticals. We're going to give people about a year and a half to come in. And after that, they're going to be tariffed if they have to bring the pharmaceuticals into the country, the drugs and other things into the country. They're going to be tariffed at a very, very high rate, like 200%. We'll give them a certain period of time to get their act together. But they were all here. Now they all left. They went to other places because we allowed people that sat in this room allowed it to happen. And I don't allow it to happen. The people in this room don't allow it to happen. So we're going to be announcing pharmaceuticals, chips, and various couple of other things, big ones. We did steel, as you know, they're 50%. We did aluminum, 50%. Lumber just came out.
Weren't you? That's copper.
And we did cars. And now today we're doing copper.
Copper, what would that tariff be on? The section
I believe the tariff on copper, we're going to make it 50%.
50%.
Any breakthroughs in
I'm glad he didn't question it.
Any breakthroughs?
I sort of thought, what would that be? It's a quick one. I didn't have much time, but he agreed with me. That's why he's ours.
Any breakthroughs on Gaza with the Prime Minister, and there's reports that you're meeting with Netanyahu again tonight. Is that accurate?
I am. He's going to come over again tonight. We're talking about Gaza. It's mostly Gaza right now. It's He's been very unfairly treated. I think what they've done to him in Israel is very unfair, having to do with this trial. I think, he's a wartime prime minister, had an unbelievable outcome, and I think he's been treated very unfairly. But he's coming over later. We're going to be talking about, I would say, almost exclusively Gaza. We got to get that solved. Gaza is a tragedy. It's a tragedy. And he wants to get it solved, and I want to get it solved, and I think the other side wants to get it solved. Steve, could you talk on that, please?
We're in proximity talks now, and we had 4 issues, and now we're down to 1 after 2 days of proximity talks. So we are hopeful that by the end of this week, we will have an agreement that will bring us into a 60-day ceasefire. 10 live hostages will be released. 9 deceased will be released. We're meeting at the president's direction with all the hostage families to let them know. And we think that this will lead to a lasting peace in Gaza.
And you're doing a good job. It's a tough one. A lot of hate. This is called long-term hate. But we think we're going to have it solved pretty soon, hopefully with a real solution, a solution that's going to be holding up.
And can I follow up? This is, I think, the first cabinet meeting since Elon Musk has not been a special government employee, not here anymore. He's now saying he's going to create a third political party. Are you worried about the impact that could have?
No, I think it'll help us. It'll probably help. Third parties have always been good for me. I don't know about Republicans, but for me.
Are you second guessing any of the cuts that Doge made since you
No.
Look,
we cut hundreds of billions of dollars with Doge. We could have done it differently. I would have done it differently a little bit, maybe, but it was something that we saved a lot of money. You can always second guess. I guess some of the people in this room maybe would have done it slightly differently, and some would have done it exactly the way it was done. But it was dramatic and it was important, and we found a lot of things like billions of dollars given to people for environmental protection where they had $100 in the account, like in Atlanta, Stacy. And then you had another one with 20 billion here, and 20 billion here, and 2 billion here, and 15 billion. And Lee, you might want to mention just a couple of those things. We really got because of Doge.
At the Trump EPA, the one big beautiful bill was filled with many big beautiful wins for the taxpayer. It delivered a sledgehammer to the Green New scam. Billions of dollars rescinded. So it's a big deal for the American taxpayer who sees money go through pass-throughs that are filled with self-dealing and conflicts of interest. They see unqualified recipients. They see reduced agency oversight, and they want accountability with their tax dollars, and they got it. So in the example of the Stacey Abrams connected NGO, they received $100 in 2023. They got $2 billion in 2024. They had to complete training on how to develop a budget that was put into their grant agreement. They, out of nowhere, started paying a CEO $800,000, a COO $450,000, 22 people making over 150 grand. Out of nowhere, this is tax dollars. So money go through pass-throughs, through other pass-throughs, through other pass-throughs, and we lose oversight over it. And you see that it's going to former Biden officials, it's going to former Obama officials, it's going to Democratic donors. And we're not here saying we want to take money from a left-wing NGO and give it to a right-wing NGO. We want to give it back to the taxpayer. This is about us being good stewards of American tax dollars without any apology or regret. That's why President Trump was elected last November, because there are a whole lot of people who maybe they hadn't voted Republican in a long time. Maybe they didn't even vote for President Trump the first time around in 2016, but they're regretting that vote from 2016 and they were making it right in 2024. So the One Big Beautiful Bill gave us the tools to rescind billions of dollars more. We're seeing hundreds of thousands of dollars that'll get wasted per electric vehicle as an example of this money that was going through it. They gave $50 million to a group called Climate Justice Alliance. They say that climate justice runs through a free Palestine. The Biden EPA gave $50 million to a group that says the climate justice runs through a free Palestine. We say that if you're going to spend $1 in the name of remediating an environmental issue, then spend $1 on remediating an environmental issue. We say that we can protect the environment and grow the economy. We want to help grow more baseload power in this country. So why is it that it took this long for this team to get assembled, to be able to fix the mess that we inherited? But gosh, we love showing up at our jobs every single day, first thing in the morning, because all day long we get things done for the American taxpayer. And Congress did its part last week by passing one big beautiful bill to deliver this accountability and to cut off the Green New scam. So maybe it's a bad day for Stacey Abrams. Maybe it's a bad day for all those well-connected Democrats getting paid off. But you know what? God bless America. Because at the end of the day, President Trump is here, J.D. Vance is here, and the greatest cabinet ever assembled to deliver that much needed and highly demanded accountability.
Mr. President,
That was a very good. And that's from the heart. Yeah, that's from the heart.
On Ukraine, the Ukrainians have asked the international court to go after Russia for using toxic chemicals in the fight. Germany and Germany and the Netherlands have intelligence saying that. What does U.S. intelligence believe, and what do you believe about the use of chemical weapons? And would you agree that that's the case for the court?
Well, ask John maybe to discuss it if you'd like, John.
Well, Mr. President, obviously chemical weapons, if it's documented in its use, it's illegal. It's against all international laws of armed conflict and treaties. And obviously I can't share in this room with this audience the intelligence that I can share with you privately, but obviously you're not going to stand or allow for any violations of international law by anyone.
That's right. Thank you. Could I ask Sean to Department of Transportation, Sean Duffy, former great congressman, very popular, decided to go out and make a couple of bucks. He made a lot. And he got bored with that, though. He likes serving people better, the people. And could I ask you to just discuss a very important subject to me, and that's the modernization of our equipment at airports so that planes aren't crashing into each other and bad things don't happen. It should have been done many years ago. We were going to do it, and then the election precluded that, unfortunately. But we're doing it now. Could you tell them where we are?
Yeah, let me start with Newark. You guys all covered what happened in Newark. We had outages for a couple of 30-second outages a couple months ago. We have, in 2 months, Mr. President, it's historic speed, laid new fiber lines for communication and tested those in the next month. So those new lines for the Philly Tracon that controls the Newark airspace, they're up and running, lightning fast speed. June was the most on-time June ever in the history of Newark for air travel. So that's going incredibly well. By the way, we should have dealt with this because Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg had moved the center from New York to Philadelphia. They didn't test the lines. They didn't do the work, which is what brought us all these problems. But in the big beautiful bill, we got $12.5 billion. This is a historic investment in air traffic control. And so what the money is going to allow us to do is move from copper to fiber all over the country. So new copper lines. We think we can do that in a year and a half to 2 years. We have radar that dates back to the 1950s, some of it from the 60s and 70s. We get brand new radar across the country as well.
Decía el presidente Donald Trump en esta comparecencia que están ustedes siguiendo aquí en Negocios Televisión que Washington en los próximos días va a enviar una nueva carta a Europa para, eso sí, llegar a un acuerdo comercial con los países europeos. Decía que los países europeos se habían portado mal con Estados Unidos, pero que ahora se estaban cambiando la situación. Por lo tanto, decía que había también mantenido una conversación con Ursula von der Leyen y otras autoridades de la Unión Europea, y decía Donald Trump que le va a enviar una carta, que no era una carta mala, sino una carta de acuerdo, un acuerdo comercial al que va a llegar Estados Unidos con precisamente la Unión Europea. Además de eso, decía también Donald Trump, estamos hablando con ellos, con los países de la Unión Europea, y nos están tratando amablemente después de años de ser terriblemente con nosotros. Solo quiero que sepan que una carta significa un trato. Por lo tanto, van a tener un trato la Unión Europea con Estados Unidos. Además decía que tienen 200 países y que no podemos reunirnos con los 200 países, pero por eso hay personas del gabinete del gobierno de los Estados Unidos que están intercediendo en nombre de Donald Trump para llegar a acuerdos. Vamos a seguir escuchando precisamente a Donald Trump.
Just to cover that, you know, there have been accidents, and my pilots, I would often hear them say, oh, good, and they would use a different system, a different country to land in New York. They'd use the radar and other things from a different country. I said, what's that? He said, oh, our system is so bad. And I knew that we were all set to start. And Boudet Edge came in, and what they did was so crazy because they hooked it copper into fiber, into steel, into all. They had all different systems. They had hundreds and hundreds of contractors, different contractors for different airports. They spent billions of dollars, and they made the system worse because you can't hook copper into fiber. It doesn't work that way. You just can't do it. It's not doable, but they tried to do it. Didn't work out too well. And in the end, it was just a complete disaster. We want to have one great company. Now, Raytheon's going to bid, IBM's going to bid. We have 5 or 6 bidders that really are good and do this stuff. And we want one, I tell, because I know about overruns, I look at the railroad out in California, headed up by one of the worst governors in our country, who I used to get along with actually, but he's just, you know, when you lose 25,000 houses and you would have had your cities burned down. If we didn't step in, Los Angeles would have been burned to the ground. But you look at that, and I said, I really know how to build. And you got to have one guy, one contractor, one great one, whether it's IBM or Raytheon is good. But you have 4 or 5 that are really, really great, and they're all bidding against each other. But you don't want to have one doing the wire and one doing the digging and one doing the demolition and then they're all saying they all blame each other because they're saying they were late and therefore you have to pay me millions of dollars more money. I know the system so well. And we're going to have a great company do the whole thing. We're going to get a fantastic price. Maybe we'll get them. They're very big and very strong, and maybe we'll get them to make a contribution toward getting it done at the right price. But we're going to have a great system. When we finish, we will have the best system on earth, done by one of the 2 or 3 best companies. There are only a few companies can do this. This is not. But if you would have seen what this other group did, they were going crazy. They had, I heard 3,000 contractors. And then when it all came together, guess what? It didn't work. It's a disaster. So we're going to have in a pretty short period of time, so it'll take us about 2 years to build it. And we'll have a contract given out probably over the next couple of months. We have some great bidders, some great companies that want to do the job. You're going to have great air traffic control.
Yes, just to make one last point on this. So the last administration signed a contract with an American company to fix the copper to fiber, and that contract was a 15-year contract. The system is failing today, but that's how idiotic and incompetent the last administration was. And under your leadership, we're saying, listen, we don't have time. We don't have 15 years. We don't have 5 years. We have to do it.
Donald Trump, que sigue desvelando aspectos importantes de esos acuerdos comerciales. También ha dicho Donald Trump que anuncia un arancel del 50% al cobre y del 200% a las industrias farmacéuticas. Por lo tanto, el presidente de los Estados Unidos de América, que acaba de anunciar que los aranceles a los productos farmacéuticos se revelarán muy pronto, ese arancel será revelado muy pronto y ha explicado que alcanzarán el 200% ese arancel. Además, ha indicado que se impondrán, por lo tanto, como les digo, un arancel también del 50% al cobre. Así que ojo a esas 2 tasas arancelarias que impone el presidente de los Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, al cobre y a los productos farmacéuticos. Continuamos escuchando a Donald Trump.
No problem with driving it. The roads aren't even crowded. So they were going to do this. Somebody's idea. Somebody got paid off a lot of money, and they started it. It was going to cost a very small amount of money, and it ended up costing literally hundreds of times what the original. And now what they did is they said, well, going into the city is too big a deal. So we'll leave it 25 miles short of the city. So now they're leaving it. They're not going to finish it, really. It's not the same project. So now they're leaving it outside of San Francisco and outside, short of each. They just want to get it done, and I've never seen cost overruns. You know, if you have a cost overrun of 10%, you should be ashamed of yourself. 20%, you should not do any more jobs. This is a cost overrun of 2,000%. something like that. It's unlimited, and it's not finished. And maybe it will never get finished. And I told Sean, look at it from every standard, but we don't want to, we have federal money going into that, and it's like throwing it out the window. So whatever you can do to stop it.
$15 billion and not one track has been laid. $15 billion and we're 16 years into the project, not one track.
Mr. President,
on New York, you're the most prominent Republican.
Aparte de los aranceles y esas tasas arancelarias, por lo tanto, que decía Donald Trump y de ese acuerdo, de esa carta que iba a enviar a la Unión Europea dentro de 2 días, también el presidente de los Estados Unidos, al ser preguntado por el nuevo partido que quería fundar, Elon Musk, su antiguo socio de gobierno y también actualmente mandatario de Tesla, bueno, pues le ha dicho Donald Trump que el tercer partido de Elon Musk, el partido que crease este empresario americano, pues decía que les ayudará a los republicanos políticamente. Intención tanto irónica, por lo tanto, del presidente al decir que el partido que crease, que va a crear en un principio Elon Musk, ayudaría a los republicanos a ganar votos en las próximas y en las futuras elecciones estadounidenses. Por lo tanto, vamos a seguir escuchando a Donald Trump, que le siguen preguntando los periodistas.
They won't be run like John runs them, believe me, he runs a good operation, but he actually said he wants to run his own grocery stores. No, this is a man who's not very capable, in my opinion, other than he's got a good line of bullshit, and he's convinced them to go with him. Now, as you know, Cuomo, who does have capability, is running, but he got knocked out, and now they're running as you have Eric Adams, the current mayor, you have Cuomo, and you have Curtis Lewa. And Curtis runs every 4 years. He seems to be a fixture on the running scale. But you know, it's I'm not getting involved. But I can tell you this. I used to say we will not ever be a socialist country, right? Well, I'll say it again. We're not going to have, if a communist gets elected to run New York, it can never be the same, but we have tremendous power at the White House to run places when we have to. We could run D.C. I mean, we're looking at D.C. We don't want crime in D.C. We want the city to run well. Susie Wiles is working very closely with the mayor, and they're doing all right. I mean, in the sense that we would run it so good, it would be run so proper, we'd get the best person to run it, and the crime would be down to a minimal, would be much less. And you know, we're thinking about doing it. To be honest with you, we want a capital that's run flawlessly, and it wouldn't be hard for us to do it. And we've had a good relationship with the mayor, and we're testing it to see if it works. But New York City will run properly. We're going to bring New York back. I love New York. You know, I loved New York for a long time. Then we had a bunch of crooked people in there. You have an attorney general who's a total stone cold crook, New York State, Letitia James, a total crook. All they do is want to go after political opponents. They do what's ever expeditious for them. She's the one that took out Cuomo because she wanted to run for governor, and then she ended up getting 1% of the vote. She polled at 1%. She dropped out, went back to attorney general. You have a lot of crooked things going on in New York. We're going to straighten out New York. Maybe we're going to have to straighten it out from Washington. But when I see a communist who has actually gotten a Democrat, pretty much gotten a Democrat nomination. They also went to that new form of voting, which is a beauty. You go in there in third place, you come out in first. That's that form of voting that they have gone to. You know what I'm talking about. It's not too good. We're going to do something for New York. I can't tell you what yet, but we're going to make New York great again. Also, we're going to make it great again with the country. What we've done in this country in the last 6 months, nobody has ever seen it. And I told the story. The king of Saudi Arabia was over there. They gave us $5.1 trillion between Saudi Arabia and UAE, Qatar. 3 stops. $5.1 trillion coming into our country as an investment, biggest investment ever made. And it's all going to good stuff. I mean, all real big, good stuff. Energy projects, big, big things. But they all 3 told me essentially the same thing. We thought your country was dead, and now you've got the hottest country in the world. We're right now riding the hottest country. We all, and you can all be proud of it. We're in the hottest country. This is the hottest country in the world. There's nobody close. Made hotter by some great pilots and great machines that nobody else has. Those great, big, beautiful machines, they rode those machines right into the toughest territory, and nobody knew what the hell happened. And then they hit their targets perfectly, and it was complete and total obliteration. And that's why that war ended, Steve. They told me that's why the war ended. The war ended when they saw that. It was over. And we're very proud of it. But we have the hottest country in the world right now, from a country that was close to dead. And if I didn't win, if you would have had the other person win, we all know who she is, whether it was she or Biden. They're the same. He may have been more competent than her, and that's hard to believe, right? But if you had that ideology in, I don't believe you would have had a country anymore. I think you would have had a country that was broken up. But we had a dead country. Now we have the hottest country in the world, and everybody knows it, and everybody said it. Mr. Vice President, do you have anything to say?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say that I'm very proud of the whole team. I think everybody has worked together. You see Pete and Marco and Steve working on some of the diplomacy, Christy and Pam working on the border. We just have a really, really solid team, and we've done a lot of good work. And in particular, I want to congratulate the White House staff led by the president on getting the One Big Beautiful Bill passed. Yeah. I was personally skeptical, sir. I never told you this, but I was skeptical we'd be able to get that thing done by July 4th. We did it because we worked together and we worked very well. So it's an honor to be a part of it, but I'm really proud of you guys for doing a great job.
The beautiful thing about it, it had something for everyone.
That's right.
Most people said it had to be broken into 7 bills. It's so big. The problem was that some of those 7 have nothing for anyone, but they had to be done for the country. You know, sometimes you have to do things for the country that aren't necessarily popular. We had a couple of them, and that wouldn't have worked. So the One Big Beautiful Bill, many people said it could never be approved. Too big, too everything is too much. But it had something very big and very important for everyone, and it's great for the country. And remember, the Democrats have come up with a false narrative, just whatever. It's just a line that they send to everybody and that they print. I think in the case of this, it's death, death. Everyone's going to die. I heard that. Everyone's going to do just the opposite. Everyone's going to live. What we're doing is saving our country and making it much bigger, better, and stronger than it ever was. I'd like to ask, Marco's been doing such a great job. Do you have anything to say?
Well, it's just going through a list here, Mr. President, and I think the Vice President's pointed out to the great team you have, and all these achievements that have happened domestically. But you think about it, under your leadership, we prevented and ended a war between India and Pakistan. NATO's now at 5% for the first time ever, the highest numbers ever. A peace deal between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. A 12-day war that ended with an American operation that we're the only country in the world that could have done. Hopefully, pretty soon, a peace deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia. The entire Middle East and the infrastructure of it has the potential now to change because of Syria and Lebanon, and it hasn't even been 6 months.
Sure.
It hasn't even been 6 months, so it's a great testament to your leadership in this.
Well, thank you very much, and you've done a fantastic job. Could I just ask Linda, she's involved in so much, she's so talented and so good, and she's working on a couple of little things like Harvard, who was given $5.5 billion over a short period of time. We caught him on that one. That's crazy. But you're working on so much. You want to bring education back to the States. How are you doing?
Well, absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity. I think on the big, beautiful bill, what we saw, was school choice. That's finally on a national basis at the state level. But there are opportunities now for scholarships, more and more of them for kids who are in failing schools. It's going to be a big turnaround. I think one of the biggest accomplishments we had over the past week was University of Pennsylvania with the Title IX ruling that Leah Thomas was stripped of her title, Riley Gaines and Paula Scanlon and other women who have stood, so strong against men and women's sports. And when you put out the executive order, that just solidified it and gave them the opportunity. So those are a couple of really, really big wins, and thank you for that opportunity.
And how are you doing with Columbia and Harvard?
We're negotiating hard. I think we're getting close to having that happen. It's not wrapped up as fast as I wanted to, but we're getting there.
Okay, good. And you've done a fantastic job. Thank you very much.
It's been a good team.
Yep. You have a great team.
Around this table, a lot of people have helped with that.
That's right. Thank you very much. Maybe just in closing, you know, we spent a lot of time, effort, very little money on this room. This is called the Cabinet Room. It's been here for a long time. And it had some pictures that were not many of them and not very good ones. And I actually spent time in the vaults. The vaults are where we have a lot of great pictures and artwork. And I picked it all myself. I'm very proud of it. That's Andrew Jackson, great Andrew Jackson. That's a gentleman named, and we call him President Polk. He was sort of a real estate guy. He was, people don't realize he was he was a one-termer, but he was a very good president. But, and I'm not sure I should be doing this, he actually gave us the state of California. He was so I'm not sure, maybe he won't be there for long. But if you notice, the frame is the exact same size almost as the other one is Andrew Jackson. So that was a part of the reason too, I have to be honest. But Polk was actually a very good president who's got the same frame that I needed, okay? And up here you have the original George Washington right behind the light. And then you have Dwight Eisenhower, who was a very underrated president. He built the interstate system, and he was the toughest president, I guess, until we came along. But I don't mind giving up that crown because I don't want to be too tough on it, but we want to be humane. But he was the toughest president on immigration. He was very strong at the borders, very, very strong. And sometimes you could be too strong. He was strong at the borders, and during a certain period of time, they were so strong that almost every farmer in California went bankrupt. And we have to remember that. We have to work together. We have to remember that. But he was a very good president and a very good general and a very good president. And I thought he deserved a position somewhere on this floor. And then you have, this is very exciting to me, he was not a Republican, to put it mildly, but he was, you know, he was a four-termer. He was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And if you notice, there were a lot of ramps outside. We have ramp. People say it's an unusual place for a ramp. It was because of him. He was wheelchair-bound. But he was an amazing man. It's an amazing portrait. And we used to have him in the room, a different portrait. And it was a terrible portrait. It was almost like it was done by a child. And I used to say, you know, I can't believe that he would have approved of that portrait of himself. And I was in the vaults and looking at things. I said, what's that? And we have some great curators here. We have 6 curators at the White House. They have 2 for paintings. They have them for furniture. They have them for different things. I guess cost is no object. Okay, cost is, maybe I'd have 1, but that's all right. But we have 6, and they're very talented, though. And he said, that's a picture of FDR. I said, really? Let me see it. They took off the wrappings, very well preserved. And I said, that's the picture they've been looking for years. That was the picture of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And I said, oh, wow. And likewise, that fit, see, frame-wise, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work if you have, I want to be nice, but it doesn't work if you have a big frame, a little frame, but it's like perfection. I'm a perfectionist. The mirror was down in the vaults also. I said, where is this from? And it's a very old, very storied mirror, beautiful. We put that up. And then over there is Honest Abe Lincoln. And that picture was in his bedroom. And we thought that this would be a very important place because this is where wars are ended. I'm not going to say wars are declared. I'm going to say wars are ended, okay? We'll be positive. And that's the picture of Abe Lincoln from his bedroom, sat in the bedroom for many, many years. That was his favorite picture of himself. And the Lincoln bedroom's very famous. You remember when Bill Clinton had it and he rented it out to people. Okay, we don't do that, but it's an incredible room. And we took that picture from his bedroom. That's Abe Lincoln, and then over here you have John Adams, and it's they were the first occupants of the White House, 1800, and John Quincy Adams, Mrs. Adams. They were the first occupants. So we have them looking at each other, and in between their stare is Abraham Lincoln trying to make peace. And that picture was in a room that I have that was not important like the cabinet. I gave it up. I said, I have to give it up because that's one of the greatest pictures of the White House. The White House is tremendous art. And the Oval Office, when we're there, we'll go over that. That's really been something. Then we got the drapes, so we got the whole thing. We got new drapes. We got new, wasn't a big expense, very, very small. And we took some of the Chinaware and silverware and trophyware, they call it, from the vaults, and we had it cleaned up. Hadn't been shined up in 100 years. Some of this has sat in the vaults for over 100 years. Amazing. Over 100 years. Many of the pictures that were put up in the Oval Office as an example, those two as an example. So he was president. They moved in 1800. And he won the election, I believe, in November of 1800, John Quincy Adams. And we thought that would be, he was considered to be a good president, and he was the first occupant of the White House, so it sort of made sense. And I love the frame of those pictures. Look at those frames. You know, I'm a frame person. Sometimes I like frames more than I like the pictures. And we have the flags of the Marines, and Space Force now has its own flag. I'm very proud of Space Force, but the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Space Force, the whole thing. And Coast Guard is right there. You never forget the Coast Guard. They do a great job. So we have the flags throughout the office. And it's really become quite a beautiful place. I don't want to tell this, Marco pointed it out. I was going to leave the clock. So as president, you have the power. If I go into the State Department or Department of Commerce or Treasury, if I see anything that I like, I'm allowed to take it. Do you believe this? So I'm in Marco's up. I see this gorgeous clock, grandfather clock. And there it is. I said, Marco. I didn't know about it. I had to read him the rule and regulation. I said, Marco, I love this clock. Look at it. It's beautiful. He said, what clock? I said, the clock that's in the other room is incredible, and nobody gets to see it there. Marco, I tried to talk him into it first, and it sort of worked, and then I had to use a little more. I said, I'd love to take that clock out and put it in the cabinet room. He said, no, are you serious? I said, Marco, I have the right to do it, Marco. And he said, all right, what the hell? So that's his contribution to the cabinet room. But it's, by the way, it's an incredible clock. And, you know, it's an important room. So you may see it again. Maybe we'll move it back sometime. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. But it really is great. Here we put on, you know, these lamps have been very important, actually, whether people love them or not. But if you see pictures like Pearl Harbor and Tora Tora Tora, you see movies about the White House where wars are being discussed. Oftentimes they'll show those lamps or something like those lamps, something that looks like them, probably not the reals, because I don't think they were allowed to. This is a very important room. This is a sacred room. And I don't think they made movies from here. You never know what they do. But they were missing medallions. See the medallions on top? They had a chain going into the ceiling. And I said, you can't do that. You have to have a medallion. They said, what's a medallion? I said, I'll show you. And then we got some beautiful medallions. And you see them. They were put up there. Makes the lamps look better. So we did these changes. And, you know, when you think of it, the cost was almost nothing. We also painted the room a nice color, beige color. And it's been really something. The only question is, will I gold leaf the corners? You could maybe tell me my cabinet could take a vote. You see the top line moldings, and the only question is, do you gold leaf it? Because you can't paint it. If you paint it, it won't look good because they've never found a paint that looks like gold. You see that in the Oval Office. They've tried for years and years. Somebody could become very wealthy, but they've never found a paint that looks like gold. So painting it is easy, but it won't look right. And the question is whether or not we should gold leaf it. Linda, do you have an opinion?
I gold leaf it.
You like it the way?
No, I gold leaf it.
You'd gold leaf it?
Yeah.
Who would gold leaf it? Could I raise you? How about, would you gold leaf it?
I was going to ask about McKinley, one of their favorite presidents.
Well, McKinley was a great president who never got credit. In fact, they changed the name of McKinley, and I changed it back because he should have been, the people of Ohio he was the governor of Ohio. The people of Ohio were very happy when I did that. I heard they were very insulted. They took the name of Mount McKinley off. That was done by Obama a little while ago, and I had to change it back. I changed it back. He actually was a great president. He was a president. He was the tariff, the most, I guess, since me. I think I'm going to outdo him, but he was a tariff president. He believed that other countries should pay for the privilege of coming into our country and taking our jobs and taking our treasure. That's the way he explained it. They took our jobs and they took our treasure, and for that they should pay. And he made them pay, and he built a tremendous fortune. In fact, in 1887, they had the Great Tariff Committee was set up in 1887 because our country had so much money, we didn't know what to do with it. And they set up a committee of, as they called them, elites, a term that we have to change because I think a lot of the people that are elites aren't elite. I think the people that aren't elite are elite, so we're going to have to maybe switch that around somehow. But they had a committee that was set up to spend the money because it was such a large amount of money at that time. It was nobody had seen anything like it, and it all came in from tariffs. And people didn't pay tax. There was no income tax system. I told you that came back in 1913. That came back and lived well for a while. And then you had the Great Depression. And then later they tried to bring back tariffs, but the whole thing was, this was after the Depression. That was one of the great misconceptions. Is people like to say, "Oh, but it was during the no." The country had a Great Depression, and then after the Depression, long after it started, they brought back tariffs to see if they could save it, but it took them really 25 years. When you say about 25 years to get out of the Great Depression, a lot of people don't understand that. But I thought it would be interesting for you to get a little view of this room. This is a very important room, very powerful room, great room. And we've done similar, but even beyond this, in the Oval Office, we brought back pictures of some of the great presidents. Many of them were in the vaults for over 100 years. Originals all, beautiful, beautiful things. And rather than sitting in a vault downstairs for 128 years, I thought we should display that, and we did that, I think, in a really good way. We've gotten very high marks, but it's interesting. People walk into that room and they look around the room. They don't even want to talk to me. They could look at it for hours. It's funny, when people come into the Oval Office, it's such an incredible, it's a sacred place. When people come into the Oval from the biggest people in the world, presidents, prime ministers, kings, queens, in one case at least, queens, and the biggest business people in the world, they walk into that office and they always say, there's no place like this in the whole world in terms of the power. It's beautiful and all, but there are other beautiful offices. You have businessmen that have offices that are, full floors of office buildings, floor-to-ceiling glass, and they walk in there and they say, there's no place like this anywhere in the world. There's no place. And, it's what it represents maybe more than the physicality of the room itself. So it's an honor to have you all, media. It's an honor to have you. I just want to say we have a fantastic cabinet. Every one of them is a star in my book. And if they're not, I'll let you know about it. I'll throw them to the wolves. I'll throw them to the wolves in 2 seconds because our country comes first, right? But I just want to thank you all for being here. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, press.
I'll tell you some other time. Thank you. Yeah, I will. Are we talking about next week or next week? I'm going to go. I'll be going to the game. Yeah, I'm going to deliver it. I have it in my office. You're right.
You're giving it up?
Bueno, pues estábamos muy pendientes de Donald Trump, de esa comparecencia que ha durado casi 2 horas de comparecencia del presidente de los Estados Unidos, donde ha abordado diferentes e importantes aspectos que le vamos a recapitular a continuación y, por lo tanto, ya enseguida recapitulamos todo. No se muevan. Bueno, lo primero que le tenemos que contar tras la comparecencia de Donald Trump, esa resaca que vamos a ir explicando de todo lo que ha dicho el presidente de los Estados Unidos, es que Donald Trump ha criticado, lo primero de todo, a los demócratas por su proyecto de ley One Big Beautiful. Bueno, pues decía el presidente de los Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, que ha criticado duramente a los demócratas durante la reunión de su gabinete de prensa, el gabinete de su equipo directivo, este martes, criticando duramente a la oposición de su país por su proyecto de ley Big Beautiful Bill y acusándolos de votar puramente por razones políticas. Trump ha prometido a todos los demócratas, ha dicho que prometió que todos los demócratas deberían perder sus elecciones por rechazar los recortes de impuestos a las propinas, la seguridad social y sobre todo las horas extras, alegando que ignoraban los amplios beneficios económicos que ofrecía su plan. Un plan que, como les tenemos que recordar, hace escasos días vio luz verde después de ser aprobado en primer lugar por parte del Senado y posteriormente en el Congreso. En la Cámara de Representantes de los Estados Unidos fue aprobada esa importante ley, una grande y bonita y hermosa ley. Por lo tanto, eso es lo que le tenemos que decir. Donald Trump que vuelve a cargar contra los demócratas por no aprobar ese proyecto, por no ser partidarios de ese proyecto de ley. Además, también hay que contarles que Donald Trump ha asegurado estar molesto con Vladimir Putin, con el mandatario ruso, por su postura ante Ucrania. Por lo tanto, el presidente de los Estados Unidos ha revelado en esa comparecencia que escuchaban hace escasos minutos que su homólogo ruso, Putin, a menudo puede ser amable, pero ha señalado que eso no significa nada. Por lo tanto, respecto a la solución del conflicto en Ucrania. Decía en declaraciones a la prensa durante la reunión con su gabinete, Donald Trump ha afirmado que puede negociar con Putin, pero no estoy contento con él, acusando al jefe de Estado ruso de hablar mucho con palabras más fuertes. Además, también ha confirmado que está revisando la propuesta de sanciones contra Rusia presentada por el senador de Carolina del Sur. Además, también Donald Trump ha dicho elogiado el coraje del pueblo ucraniano en medio de la campaña militar de Rusia y ha pedido, eso sí, un rápido cese del conflicto. Bueno, pues van a escuchar ustedes a Donald Trump criticar a Putin y decir que Putin no sabe, decía Donald Trump, le preguntaban, ¿qué va a hacer usted con Putin? Bueno, pues decía Donald Trump que la mejor respuesta es la sorpresa, como ya pasó en el conflicto de Oriente Medio.
We're dealing with him now too. We're not happy with Putin. I'm not happy with Putin. I can tell you that much right now, because he's killing a lot of people, and a lot of them are his soldiers and their soldiers mostly. And it's now up to 7,000 a week, and I'm not happy with Putin. Okay. Any questions? Yes.
Yes, sir. You just said you're not happy with Vladimir Putin. Is there anything that you plan to do to act on that feeling of unhappiness?
I wouldn't be telling you. Don't we want to have a little surprise? You know, one of the things we did with the attack is that you asked that question. I didn't mean to be rude, but I'm rude because I'm looking at some of these crooked people up here. So I'm rude, but your question was asked.
El presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, quien también ha advertido hace escasos minutos que los esfuerzos de los países BRICS para reducir y hacer daño contra el dólar estadounidense, para debilitarlo, bueno, pues representa una amenaza comparable a perder, ha dicho Donald Trump, una guerra mundial. En esa reunión, Donald Trump ha acusado al bloque de intentar despojar al dólar de su estatus de reserva global, declarando: el dólar es el rey. Lo intentan despojar, decía, el dólar es el rey, lo mantendremos así. Por lo tanto, Donald Trump, que dice que la amenaza de los BRICS al dólar sería como simplemente perder una guerra mundial y que no tienen que ejercer esa fuerza, los BRICS no tienen posibilidad de ejercer esa fuerza contra el dólar. Por lo tanto, Donald Trump que dice que mantendrán el dólar en la postura, en el nivel en el que se encuentra, a pesar de esos ataques, esas palabras de los países que componen los BRICS. También les tenemos que contar Donald Trump, que ha hablado mucho y largo y tendido sobre varios aspectos, y uno de ellos ha sido que Trump se ha enfadado al ser preguntado por Jeffrey Einstein. Por lo tanto, el presidente de los Estados Unidos ha desestimado durante su reunión de gabinete la pregunta de una periodista sobre los últimos acontecimientos relacionados con los archivos de Einstein, afirmando que hay asuntos más importantes que considerarlo. Van a escuchar ustedes cómo Donald Trump, al ser preguntado sobre este caso, decía que eso, precisamente, siguen hablando de Jeffrey Einstein. Decía el presidente, cuando hay otros temas importantes sobre la mesa. Bueno, pues escuchen lo que decía Donald Trump.
Resolve whether or not he did, and also could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of the set?
Yeah, sure. If I
Could I just interrupt for
Sure.
1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Aparte de eso, hay que hacerles un pequeño inciso y un pequeño recordatorio antes de seguir analizando toda la resaca de lo que ha sido esa rueda de prensa de Donald Trump, donde, como les digo, ha dejado muchos titulares importantes, y es que se dice que se espera que el presidente de los Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, y el primer ministro de Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, que ya se reunieron en la tarde-noche de ayer, bueno, pues se vuelven a reunir en la Casa Blanca más tarde en el día de hoy. Es lo que ha dicho este martes por la tarde el reportero de Axios, Barak Ravid. Los dos líderes se centrarán sobre todo en esta reunión, en el conflicto en curso en Gaza y en los esfuerzos para lograr un alto al fuego y un acuerdo sobre los rehenes, según informa, por lo tanto, el medio Axios, que cita a funcionarios israelíes. Netanyahu se encuentra actualmente de visita oficial en Estados Unidos tras haberse reunido previamente con Trump, como les digo, en el día de ayer, pero es que también se ha reunido en el día de hoy con el presidente de la Cámara de Representantes, con Mike Johnson. Por lo tanto, en esta noche se reuniría de nuevo, según apunta Axios, con el mandatario de los Estados Unidos de América, ese hombre que ven en pantalla. Bueno, pues con Donald Trump. Por lo tanto, se espera que visite de nuevo también el Capitolio, Netanyahu. Vamos a estar muy pendientes de todo lo que acontece aquí sobre esta reunión, nueva reunión entre ambos mandatarios en Negocios Televisión. Aparte de eso, también de hablar Donald Trump, también otra de las personas que ha hablado ha sido Bessent. Bueno, pues el secretario del Tesoro de los Estados Unidos, que ha dicho, cuando estaba hablando Donald Trump sobre el tema de los aranceles, ha matizado y ha dicho que han recibido ya los Estados Unidos de América 100.000 millones de dólares en aranceles hasta ahora, pero que, ojo, podrían aumentar a 300.000 millones de dólares para finales de este año. Escuchen ustedes a Bessent.
We will have taken in about $100 billion in tariff income thus far this year, and that's with the tariffs, the major tariffs not having started till the second quarter. So we could expect that could be well over $300 billion by the end of the year. We don't agree with CBO scoring, but for those who do, the CBO scored tariff income over the next 10 years at $2.8 trillion, which we think is probably low. And sir, under your leadership, we're witnessing.
And they gave us no credit during this last.
Unos aranceles que entrarían en vigor el 1 de agosto, después de retrasar Donald Trump, como ustedes saben, tras firmar en el día de ayer esa orden ejecutiva que retrasaba del 9 de julio al 1 de agosto la entrada en vigor de los aranceles. Por lo tanto, aumentaba esa duración de cuándo iban a entrar los aranceles en vigor el presidente de los Estados Unidos, y sobre ello precisamente le preguntaban los periodistas, los compañeros que se encontraban en esa reunión del gabinete del equipo de Donald Trump, y Donald Trump decía que ellos no habrían hecho un cambio en la fecha, sino que simplemente habían hecho una aclaración. Escuchen ustedes a Donald Trump.
We didn't move, no. It's always been August 1st, that's when we're paying. And a statement was put out today, and I put it out just to make it clear. It wasn't a change, it was August 1st. We don't change very much. You know, every time we put out a statement, they say he made a change. I didn't make a change. A clarification, maybe. No, August 1st they pay. And everybody pays, everybody has to pay, and the incentive is that they have the right to deal in the United States. If they don't want to, they don't have to pay, and they don't have to deal here. But if they want to buy and make a lot of money and sell in the United States, they have to do that. You know, if you go back and look at...
Y también les tenemos que contar una última hora de las declaraciones que ha hecho precisamente Donald Trump, y es que el presidente de los Estados Unidos de América ha dicho en esa comparecencia también una declaración muy importante, y es que está considerando la toma federal del gobierno de Washington DC. Por lo tanto, un Donald Trump que avisa de una de las ideas, de los objetivos que tiene su gobierno actualmente, y es que decía Donald Trump, les vuelvo a repetir, que Estados Unidos está considerando la toma federal del gobierno de Washington DC. Vamos a ver si esto da lugar o no tiene lugar, pero de momento lo que es cierto a día de hoy es que el propio presidente de los Estados Unidos ha confirmado en esa rueda de prensa, tras ser preguntado por los compañeros periodistas, que su gabinete, que su gobierno está considerando la posibilidad de tomar la toma federal del gobierno de Washington DC. También hay que contarles que Donald Trump ha dicho que va a enviar cartas dentro de un par de días a la Unión Europea, que antes los europeos le habíamos tratado mal, que le habían tratado mal los europeos, que ha hablado con Ursula von der Leyen, que ahora se muestran los europeos más predispuestos a llegar a un acuerdo y se encuentran más amables a la hora de reunirse con los propios americanos, y que decía que, bueno, que hay muchos países, 200 países, la cifra de 200 países, que también van a recibir cartas, que las cartas no quieren decir que sea algo negativo, sino que pueden ser acuerdos, como en el caso de la Unión Europea, que va a recibir dentro de 2 días, como ha dicho el propio presidente. Y aparte de eso, también Donald Trump decía que otros países no tienen relaciones, no tienen negociaciones directas con el propio presidente de los Estados Unidos, pero que para eso hay intermediarios, hay personas relacionadas con el gobierno americano para defender los intereses y para llegar a acuerdos con la Casa Blanca. Por lo tanto, que no se alarmen otros países. Van a escuchar ustedes a Donald Trump cuando hablaba de esa carta que le va a enviar, a la Unión Europea dentro de pocos días.
In terms of other things that they do, they're very tough. But now they're being very nice to us, and we'll see what happens. We're probably 2 days off from sending them a letter. We are talking to them. I just want you to know, a letter means a deal. You know, a lot of people say, we got 200 countries. We can't meet with 200 countries. We have a few trusted people that know what they're doing, that are doing a good job, but you can't do it. You have to do it in a more general way.
Y aparte de Estados Unidos, aparte de Donald Trump, también les tenemos que contar una última hora que nos llega y es a nivel nacional. Por lo tanto, estaba teniendo lugar una votación para ver si se echaba fuera o no a el periodista Vito Quiles del Congreso. Bueno, pues el Partido Socialista Obrero Español, el PSOE y sus socios han tumbado el intento del Partido Popular y de Vox de evitar la expulsión de Vito Quiles y otros considerados ultras del Congreso. Esos periodistas o pseudoperiodistas, como los califica, eso sí, el gobierno y los líderes y los socios del gobierno en la rueda de prensa. Ya lo hemos ido viviendo a lo largo de estos días, de esta semana y estos meses anteriores, donde esos periodistas se quejaban que no les dejaban preguntar con libertad, en un principio, la pregunta que quisieran hacerle a los representantes de estos partidos del gobierno. Por lo tanto, la última hora pasaría porque Vito Quiles ha sido expulsado del Congreso de los Diputados. El PSOE y sus socios han tumbado el intento del Partido Popular y de Vox de evitar que eso se diera. Por lo tanto, le tenemos que decir que Vito Quiles ha sido expulsado, por lo tanto, y no podrá acudir al Congreso de los Diputados. La enmienda a la totalidad de la norma del PP y Vox han sido, por lo tanto, rechazadas por la mayoría de la investidura. Por lo tanto, un duro revés para el periodista español Vito Quiles y, por lo tanto, también PP y Vox, que no han podido evitar que se expulse a Vito Quiles del Congreso de los Diputados. Esa es la última hora que les tenemos que contar en cuanto a nivel nacional. Y otra pequeña última hora que les tenemos que contar, y es que, por ejemplo, Macron ha dicho que el Estado de Palestina, antes de darle paso a otras noticias, es que Macron ha afirmado en su visita a Reino Unido en el día de hoy que el Estado de Palestina es el único camino hacia la paz en Oriente Medio. Por lo tanto, Macron, que vuelve a reiterarse, ya lo repitió hace escasamente un mes, diciendo que el único camino, la única vía para llegar a la paz absoluta es que se reconozca el Estado de Palestina para llegar a la paz en el conflicto de Oriente Medio. Aparte de esto, bueno, pues les tenemos que contar también otras últimas horas, otros vídeos virales que les tenemos que contar, y es que hay 2 heridos tras un incendio en una fábrica en Bangkok. Un gran incendio en una fábrica de caucho ha dejado 2 personas heridas, un trabajador y un bombero en las afueras, como les digo, de Bangkok. Fueron trasladados de inmediato, eso sí, al hospital, y seguimos pendientes de cómo evolucionan. Las imágenes muestran el incendio arrasando la fábrica con columnas de humo oscuro que se elevan desde el techo derrumbado del edificio. Según reportan testigos, se formaron bolas de fuego cuando las llamas incendiaron una tubería de petróleo utilizada en el proceso de fabricación. Los bomberos y más de 20 camiones de bomberos también han acudido a dicho lugar y dedicaron, eso sí, aproximadamente 2 horas para poder controlar el incendio, que consumió gran cantidad de combustible y productos de caucho que se encontraban dentro de la fábrica. Los empleados de dicha empresa han dicho a medios locales que no sabían a qué se debía el incendio y, por lo tanto, las autoridades a esta hora de la tarde siguen investigando cuál es la causa habría provocado esta grave noticia en la que 2 personas han resultado heridas en este incendio en una fábrica de Bangkok. Bueno, pues otro incendio también, y es en Francia, se lo veníamos contando, en el día de hoy había un incendio en Marsella. Bueno, pues enormes llamas están haciendo estragos y quemando árboles en Narbonne, Francia. Impactantes imágenes que nos llegan también en las últimas horas de llamas que han iluminado el cielo nocturno de Narbonne, Francia. El incendio forestal comenzó cerca de la localidad en el suroeste de Francia y fue avivado por el viento de 60 kilómetros por hora. Este hecho se produce, como les digo, mientras se suceden otros incendios forestales en las afueras de Marsella, la segunda ciudad de Francia, que ha quemado ya 700 hectáreas y ha dañado a más de 10 edificios, según han dicho en las últimas horas funcionarios locales a los periodistas este martes. Por lo tanto, hay un incendio ahora mismo en la localidad marsellesa, en la localidad de Marsella, la segunda ciudad más grande de París, y también hay otro incendio en el sureste de Francia, en la localidad de Norbie. Por lo tanto, Francia que se ve envuelta en llamas en estas últimas horas. Y otra última hora que también le tenemos que contar desde Negocios Televisión es que ha habido una gran noticia para la astronomía. El espacio es tan inmenso como intrigante. Como ustedes saben, estrellas, planetas, agujeros negros. Bueno, pues nunca se sabe qué se va a descubrir, pero siempre da pie a preguntas. En esta ocasión, el protagonista es el telescopio espacial James Webb, que ha captado por primera vez en la historia la imagen directa de un exoplaneta ligero, el más liviano jamás observado con esta técnica. El planeta, bautizado como TWA-TB, orbita una estrella situada a unos 110 años luz de la Tierra, pero lo más curioso de toda esta noticia no es dónde está o sobre todo su tamaño, sino que se encuentra envuelto en un disco de escombros cósmicos y polvo, en plena formación de sistema planetario. Además de eso, aparte de estas noticias de última hora, les tenemos que repasar cómo se encuentra actualmente el mercado de la criptomoneda, que cada vez, como le decíamos, la gente invierte más y está más pendiente de este mercado. Bueno, pues se lo vamos a repasar antes de hacer un alto en el camino y ya ir con mi compañera Alma Navarro con ese cierre de Wall Street. Bueno, pues pendientes como les digo, del mercado de las criptomonedas, donde actualmente se encuentra BTC con una subida del 1,07% y tiene un valor ahora mismo de $109.071. TH, que tiene una subida de 3,6% y tiene un valor de 2.624 dólares. Después tenemos a XRP, que tiene una bajada del 0,16% y un precio de mercado actualmente de 2,30 dólares. Después está BNB, que tiene una subida, tiene ahora mismo una subida del 0,39% y un valor de 661 dólares. Después encontramos a Sol con una subida también de 1,51% y un valor de 152 dólares. Después, posteriormente, encontramos también a TRX con una bajada del 0,13% y el valor de mercado actual es de 0,28 dólares. Doge, que tiene una subida del 2,59%. Y su precio de mercado es de 0,17 dólares. Y por último, eso sí, tenemos a ADA, que tiene también una subida de un 1,56% y un coste de mercado actual del 0,58 dólares, de 0,58 dólares. Por lo tanto, así se encuentra el mercado actualmente de las criptomonedas. Por lo tanto, van a seguir ustedes pendientes ahora de la economía, van a seguir ustedes pendientes también de la política y geopolítica actual, porque no para. Recordemos que se prevé que esta tarde-noche se reúna Donald Trump con Netanyahu de nuevo. Pero bueno, les seguiremos informando de esto y de otros asuntos aquí en Negocios de Televisión. Ahora, como les digo, una pequeña pausa publicitaria y de vuelta con el cierre de Wall Street con Alma Navarro.
Todo propietario tiene miedo a alquilar sus inmuebles. Ya no es así. En SEAG te ofrecen su garantía de alquiler, con la que puedes alquilar tu vivienda y en caso de impago podrás seguir cobrando mes a mes de forma indefinida hasta recuperar el inmueble. No tendrás que preocuparte del proceso jurídico porque desde SEAG se ocupan de todo, incluso de los actos de vandalismo. Además te protegen contra el subarriendo y la ocupación. Cuentan con prestaciones, tanto para alquiler de larga estancia, temporal, habitaciones, locales, incluso con alquileres ya en curso. ¿Por qué vender tu vivienda si la puedes alquilar para siempre? Alquila tranquilo. SEAG responde.
Recibes un mensaje alarmante de tu inquilino en el que te informa que no puede pagar el alquiler. No te preocupes. SEAG está aquí para ayudarte. Nuestro equipo te asegura que recibirás tu renta a tiempo. Con SEAG, tu renta está protegida. Recibes el ingreso en tu cuenta como siempre. Disfruta de la tranquilidad sabiendo que SEAG maneja el imprevisto por ti. Alquila tranquilo. SEAG responde.
¿Qué cuento quieres hoy? ¿Te cuento uno de los míos? ¿El del farmacéutico? ¿O el de María, la abogada?
El de Ana, la arquitecta.
Vale. Eres una niña que soñaba con crear los edificios más impresionantes de la Tierra. Se pasaba el día dibujándolos. Sabía que algún día acabarían llegando a lo más alto de cada ciudad. Y que cualquier persona...
Cada profesional tiene detrás una historia increíble. Creer en ella es lo que de verdad cuenta. Arquia Banca, el banco de los profesionales.
Silver Gold Patrimonio nace en 2018 con el objetivo de innovar en el mercado de los metales preciosos de inversión, ofreciendo nuevas alternativas para que cualquier persona, familia o empresa pueda entrar en el fantástico mundo de los metales de inversión de forma sencilla y acompañada por consultores expertos en el sector. Silver Gold Patrimonio quiere avanzar contigo.
buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la primera parte del cierre de Wall Street en Negocios Televisión, a la primera y a la segunda, porque vamos a estar con ustedes contándoles toda la actualidad del mercado hasta las 10:30 de la noche, hora central europea. En este momento quedan 2 horas para que termine la cotización en el mercado de renta variable norteamericano y parece que los inversores siguen un poco revueltos ante ese nuevo envite arancelario del presidente de Estados Unidos, lo que yo he bautizado como la guerra arancelaria de Trump 2.0, una guerra arancelaria, un órdago arancelario mucho más moderado, el que está lanzando el presidente norteamericano esta vez que el pasado día 2 de abril con ese Liberation Day que puso el mercado patas arriba. Quizá porque Trump está siendo más laxo o más propenso a negociar, quizá también porque el mercado se ha acostumbrado, no estamos viendo una reacción tan contundente y tan negativa en la cotización de los índices. A esta hora vamos a ver en tiempo real cómo están comportándose los principales índices norteamericanos cuando quedan, como les digo, pues ya menos de 2 horas, 1 hora y 59 minutos exactamente para que se produzca el cierre del mercado de este martes, día 8 de julio. En directo continúa en negativo el índice Dow Jones de industriales, que no consigue colocarse en verde y que retrocede un 0,28% cotizando en los 44.281 puntos. El Nasdaq, por su parte, suma un 0,22, marca 22.736. S&P 500, por su parte, está prácticamente plano, pero de momento conseguimos verlo en verde con una revalorización del 0,05% y 6.232 puntos en directo. Vamos a ver por dentro cuáles son las principales compañías que acompañan a las subidas y a las bajadas en el mercado americano. Tenemos liderando ganancias rally, el que está viviendo Intel. En la sesión de hoy se impulsa más de un 7%, un 7,7%, y cotiza en los $23.70. También tenemos a un semiconductor con avances cercanos al 5%, en los $57.27, y a Diamondback Energy, que sube un 4,8% y cotiza en los $144.50. Liderando caídas, farolillo rojo de la sesión, Datadog está perdiendo cerca de un 4%, cotizando los $146.50. Tenemos a PayPal también cotizando con una corrección del 1,85% al borde de los $75, y a Durdas, que pierde un 1,7% y marca $242.50. Eso en directo en el mercado de renta variable, pero también tenemos que revisar otros mercados como un mercado de renta fija en el que continúa tensionándose la rentabilidad de los bonos tanto a corto como a largo plazo. Ahí lo están viendo en su pantalla. Tenemos al bono americano a 10 años acercándose al 4,5% en el 4,42, y el bono americano a 30 años, el que más reaccionó con subidas ayer. Ahí están viendo que la vela sigue en positivo, que el gráfico es indudable, porque tenemos al bono americano a 30 años ya en el 4,95%, muy cerca de ese nivel crítico del 5%. Vamos a poner negro sobre blanco sobre lo que está pasando en el mercado y sobre el impacto que está teniendo los inversores. También muy pendientes de un mercado de divisas en el que el dólar está continuando por segundo día consecutivo de recuperar ciertas posiciones al calor de la guerra arancelaria de Trump. De hecho, esa recuperación de posiciones lleva a la comparativa euro-dólar a situarse, bueno, ahora mismo acaba de recuperar el 1,17. Les iba a decir que por debajo de 1,17, en 1,1690, pero hasta ahora está en 1,17, y también estamos viendo cierta tendencia a la baja en la libra frente al dólar, que se sitúa en el nivel de 1,35. También destacable en la sesión de hoy la cotización del oro, que cae más de un 1% y que podría perder los $3.300, aunque cotiza de momento por encima en 3.314. Revalorización en el mercado de petróleo con un Brent que cotiza con un repunte del entorno del punto porcentual. Concretamente, ese repunte a esta hora es del, enseguida se lo vamos a contar, del 1,02%, y ya tenemos al barril Brent, atención importante, por encima de los $70. El West Texas de referencia en Estados Unidos también cotizando con una revalorización del 1% por encima de los $68, concretamente en 68,60. Eso es lo que está pasando en el mercado, con un mercado en el que Wall Street cotiza con indefinición ante este nuevo episodio, este nuevo capítulo de la guerra comercial de Donald Trump, con un presidente de Estados Unidos que ha asegurado que enviará a la Unión Europea una carta arancelaria en los próximos 2 días, pero dice que enviar cartas no es malo, que eso significa que quiere negociar. Trump ha amenazado, eso sí, con aranceles del 200% a la industria farmacéutica y del 50% al acero, y mientras todo eso sucede, Fitch alerta de que la guerra comercial provoca volatilidad en los flujos comerciales. Pues vamos a ir poquito a poco por partes y vamos a contarles cuáles han sido los principales titulares y los mensajes que ha dejado el presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, que ha participado en una extensa reunión con su gabinete. En esa reunión, el presidente de Estados Unidos ha asegurado que los aranceles entrarán en vigor el 1 de agosto y que esa nueva fecha es una aclaración, no necesariamente una ampliación de la fecha anterior, que recordemos culminaba mañana, día 9 de julio. También ha dicho que es imposible negociar con 200 países, que son los que reclaman acuerdos comerciales, y que Europa probablemente reciba su carta de aranceles en un par de días. En cualquier caso, ha asegurado Trump que recibir cartas significa que Estados Unidos está interesado en negociar y en alcanzar los mejores acuerdos.
We didn't move, no. It's always been August 1st, that's what we're paying. And a statement was put out today, and I put it out just to make it clear. It wasn't a change, it was August 1st. We don't change very much. You know, every time we put out a statement, they say he made a change. I didn't make a change. A clarification, maybe. No, August 1st they pay. And everybody pays, everybody has to pay. And the incentive is that they have the right to deal in the United States. If they don't want to, they don't have to pay, and they don't have to deal here. But if they want to buy and make a lot of money and sell in the United States, they have to do that. You know, if you go back and look at...
Por cierto, que está hablando precisamente de esas cartas, el secretario de Comercio de Estados Unidos, Howard Lutnick, está diciendo en una entrevista en CNBC que espera que se envíen entre 15 y 20 cartas comerciales en los próximos días. También ha dicho, pues lo que yo les acabo de contar, que Trump pretende aplicar un arancel del 50% al cobre y que la idea es conseguir que la producción de cobre vuelva a Estados Unidos. Dice que ese arancel al cobre se va a implementar también a finales de julio o el próximo día 1 de agosto. En esa entrevista en CNBC, Howard Lutnick también ha dicho que muchos países han hecho ofertas para abrir sus mercados. Así que, después de la docena de cartas que el presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, envió ayer, se espera que se envíen, entre otras, 15 y 20 cartas con propuestas arancelarias, bueno, pues un poco adaptadas a las características de cada país y a lo que cada país haya querido negociar. Más en clave geopolítica, un mensaje que ha lanzado el presidente de Estados Unidos en esa reunión con su gabinete. Dice que su homólogo ruso, Vladimir Putin, a menudo puede ser muy amable, pero señala que eso no significa nada. Dice que no está contento con él porque mucha gente está muriendo en la guerra entre Rusia y Ucrania y que, bueno, pues esa amabilidad no significa nada respecto a la solución del conflicto en Ucrania. En declaraciones a la prensa durante la reunión de su gabinete, Trump ha afirmado que puede negociar con Putin, pero que no está contento con él, acusando al jefe de Estado ruso de hablar mucho con palabras más fuertes. También ha confirmado que está revisando la propuesta de sanciones contra Rusia presentada por el senador de Carolina del Sur, Lindsey Graham. Además, Trump ha elogiado el coraje del pueblo ucraniano en medio de la campaña militar de Rusia y ha pedido un rápido cese del conflicto.
We're dealing with him now too. We're not happy with Putin. I'm not happy with Putin. I can tell you that much right now, because he's killing a lot of people, and a lot of them are his soldiers and their soldiers mostly, and it's now up to 7,000 a week, and I'm not happy with Putin. Okay, any questions? Yes.
Yes, sir. You just said you're not happy with Vladimir Putin. Is there anything that you plan to do to act on that feeling of unhappiness?
Well, what are we telling you? Don't we want to have a little surprise? You know, one of the things we did with the attack is that you asked that question. I didn't mean to be rude, but I'm rude because I'm looking at some of these crooked people up here, so I'm rude. But your question was asked.
Más cosas, les cuento que la secretaria de Agricultura de Estados Unidos, Brooke Rollins, ha anunciado una prohibición de la compra de tierras agrícolas para ciudadanos chinos y otros adversarios extranjeros, citando como razones la seguridad nacional y la protección de la propiedad de tierras agrícolas estadounidenses. Durante una conferencia de prensa, Rollins ha anunciado un plan de acción de seguridad agrícola nacional que incluye 7 puntos de acción clave, siendo el primero la prohibición de compra de tierras raras agrícolas y el intento de recuperar lo que ya ha sido comprado por China y otros adversarios extranjeros a nivel del gobierno federal. Hoy recuperaremos, ha dicho, este propósito en nuestras tierras agrícolas estadounidenses. Los adversarios extranjeros están creando vulnerabilidades peligrosas en los mismos sistemas que nos sustentan. Más cosas, les contamos que la compañía española de acero inoxidable Acerinox se está planteando seguir los pasos de Ferrovial y valora dar el salto a la bolsa de Estados Unidos en los próximos años con el objetivo de ampliar su base inversora para una compañía que, igual que la firma de infraestructuras, tiene el grueso de su negocio en el país norteamericano. Somos una compañía americana con una base inversora europea, explicaba en abril Carlos Ortega, presidente de Acerinox. Ahora Bernardo Velázquez, CEO de la compañía, ha confirmado en una entrevista concedida a la agencia Bloomberg que la firma no descarta empezar a cotizar en el mercado estadounidense. Eso sí, la operación tendría que esperar a consolidar Haynes International, la compañía estadounidense adquirida por Acerinox a finales del año pasado. Y continuamos actualizando la información geopolítica en Negocios Televisión. En nuestro cierre de Wall Street vamos con últimas horas, como les digo, en clave más de carácter geopolítico. Les empiezo contando que la decisión del presidente Donald Trump el pasado lunes, ayer, de enviar armas defensivas a Ucrania ha seguido a días de consultas con asesores y otros líderes mundiales sobre de dónde provendrían realmente esas armas. Trump le ha dicho al presidente de Ucrania, Volodímir Zelensky, que quiere ayudar a las defensas aéreas de Ucrania, enfatizando, eso sí, que Estados Unidos tuvo que pausar el envío de armas para revisar sus propias reservas, según 2 fuentes informadas de esa conversación. Esas fuentes han dicho que Trump prometió enviar inmediatamente 10 interceptores Patriot menos de los que se habían planeado en el envío suspendido y ayudar a encontrar otros medios de suministro. El día anterior, el canciller alemán Friedrich Merz había llamado a Trump para pedirle que liberara los interceptores Patriot que fueron detenidos mientras se dirigían a Ucrania, según funcionarios alemanes. Trump ha prometido a Zelensky que enviará inmediatamente a Ucrania 10 misiles interceptores para los sistemas de defensa aérea Patriot de Ucrania, según está informando el medio de comunicación Axios. Y más cosas que les contamos, información de última hora. Las reservas de misiles de defensa aérea Patriot en Estados Unidos se han reducido al 25% del nivel necesario para implementar los planes militares del Pentágono, según ha informado el diario The Guardian. Según ellos, el envío de ayuda militar a Ucrania y la escalada del conflicto entre Irán e Israel, cuando Estados Unidos repelió activamente los ataques aéreos iraníes contra territorio israelí y su base en Qatar, provocaron una fuerte reducción de las existencias de misiles Patriot. Como señala la publicación, la reciente decisión del gobierno estadounidense del presidente Donald Trump de suspender el suministro de armas a Kiev se basó en datos del contador global de municiones que el Pentágono utiliza para determinar el nivel de arsenales necesario para el éxito de las operaciones militares estadounidenses. Esta cifra está por debajo del mínimo desde el inicio de los envíos de armas a gran escala a Ucrania en 2022. Y les contamos también a esta hora que la Fuerza Aérea Israelí ha llevado a cabo un ataque con aviones no tripulados en la ciudad de Trípoli, en el norte del Líbano, contra lo que ha descrito como un terrorista clave de Hamas, según han informado las fuerzas de defensa de Israel. El ataque ha ocurrido poco antes de las 5 hora local, lo que marca una rara operación israelí en lo profundo del norte del Líbano. No se han dado a conocer más detalles sobre el objetivo o las posibles víctimas. Y les contamos también que un impostor ha utilizado inteligencia artificial para falsificar voz y mensajes del secretario de Estado de Estados Unidos, de Marco Rubio, con el fin de comunicarse con altos funcionarios, según está informando The Washington Post. El medio señala que el suplantador logró de esta forma ponerse en contacto con 3 ministros de Asuntos Exteriores de otros países, así como con un miembro del Congreso de Estados Unidos y un gobernador. La publicación indica que las autoridades desconocen quién está detrás de estas acciones, pero sospechan que el malhechor estaba tratando de manipular a funcionarios gubernamentales influyentes con el fin de obtener acceso a información o cuentas. Para establecer la comunicación, el impostor ha